bedroom shadows, cloaked and haunting me, cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me, tapping at my window. I can't bear to open my eyes, a breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed. Ghostly apparition hovering over me, asking what it wants to know. I'm shaking now, it calls out my name, cloaked and haunting me, cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me, tapping at my window. I can't bear to open my eyes, a breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed.
Light that brings out. In the dark you hear a growl. Monsters in the night, unnatural appetite. A demon sent me here to take you to the afterlife. I feel something change inside of me. The inner human slowly dead in me. I feel it come alive. The darkness brings me light. There ain't no stopping it, and you will never hide from me. Pain of the change. What have I become? A creature of the night, ruled by moonlight. The pain of the change. This body's no longer mine. Feel wild and free, but caged at the same time. shifting in the night, stalking you. Does my face seem familiar? Does my body feel you more? Will I change you or will it end you? And the power that I have can give you eternal life. Death doesn't know me. I've become eternal. When the hunger wakes me, I live to feed. With the darkness surrounds me, where the mist, she follows me. I walk alone in the night, watching you, following you, leading on you.
Welcome everyone to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner. This is PRT. Welcome to the real reality. I'll tell you right now, the real reality is not good right now for us. We are all sick. I was the last one to get it. I still don't have it full force, but my body does that. It'll fight it, and either it's either gonna take it down, or I'm gonna end up getting it. But I'll get it after everybody else has it, which sucks because then you're like everybody else as well, and they're like on with their lives, and you're sick. So you just kind of deal with it.
Yeah, thankfully I'm on the mend. I think I was the first one to get sick.
Yeah.
Something going around.
Well, I think D was. My brother was.
Oh yeah.
But we had a bunch of guards that were sick. That's what sucked. It was like you go check on them and everybody's sick. And it's like this throat, nose thing.
Headache. It's like a
Headache.
Goes into your nose and out to your throat.
It's like your head is pounding. Oh, well. But everybody's got it, dude. I mean, everywhere you go, like, dude, it's like everybody. So if you haven't got it yet, you're probably going to get it. Everybody in Austin has it anyway. I don't know how many people around the rest of the state have it, but here in Austin, they got it. I hate that thread. I hate any kind of anything on my hats. I can't stand it. I got this brush for them.
Yeah.
Most people wear hats. They don't have they don't have a lot of hair, so they start to go. A lot of my friends are balding, and they wear hats. But I've always liked hats. It's always been a thing of mine. And my friends are like, "Why do you wear that?" Like I'm not supposed to wear hats because I have hair. You have a full head of hair. Why are you mocking us? It's just not right. You shouldn't be wearing those. You have too many hats. It's not right. You need to stop.
First you have a hair, now you have a beard, now you want hats too? You're taking it all.
Yeah, you want everything. What is this?
I'm pretty utilitarian. I don't wear hats unless there's a practical purpose.
I wear hats.
Well, your head looks like a Subway sandwich.
Does it though?
A long way, yeah.
Yeah.
Big ass forehead.
See, it's like this.
He looks like that, like a Mexican Ben Stiller.
It's that long. It's that long.
It's so rare for you to not do your hair that it's funny seeing it undone.
tall.
Is it undone?
Yeah, he didn't.
Yeah,
He didn't.
Can't tell that.
Well, I mean, like I brushed it, but I didn't put anything in it.
Do you put product in
He
it?
does. He
Yeah,
does.
sometimes. Yeah.
You can't tell.
I put like a small amount of pomade in it.
Remember
like,
when
I
I
don't
touched
like
it and
I
it was
don't
like
like-
knocking
Oh yeah.
faster?
See, I don't
No,
notice
it's
that.
not. Yeah,
I noticed that,
that's
though.
why I put like the smallest amount of pomade in my hair. and
He's
that's
like,
it.
no, it's not. He's all mad. Like, no, it's not, Mom.
Well,
It's
yeah.
in my room.
Well, yeah, because look at that
See, that's why it's so
tarantula on
funny.
his head.
But I don't look at dudes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I am a heterosexual, so I don't look at dudes.
How can you not look at that and be like, what the hell is that?
I don't know why you're looking
What
at
is
it.
that?
at
Why are
all.
you worried about it?
Why are you worried about it?
You're like overly concerned with it.
It's
Okay, so why are you worried about the shape of my head?
I'm not looking at your head.
Oh no, you're
Your
not.
head looks like
Oh
a
no, you're not
Subway
looking at my
sandwich. I
head.
can't help.
You're not looking
Hey,
at my
hey,
head.
I
huh?
cannot help that your
Yeah,
head looks
yeah,
like
yeah.
a fucking
Okay.
Subway sandwich. Excuse my language.
I don't have to look at the details to notice the
See, look at
overall
that.
shape is weird.
Just made me cuss.
Why
Why'd
would
make me
you
cuss like
notice my head and my hair enough to compare it to a Subway sandwich?
And see, you know what's funny though, because
Unless you're looking at it,
cursed.
Because
let me go back to me.
Because you like because you're
I don't know what
jealous.
you're talking about right now, but anyways, like
I'm tall, dark, and handsome.
Curse, right? So technically, he made me curse.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Kind of like how D supposed like so. So I gave my brother a knife, right? He's gonna get mad when I tell this story. I gave my brother a knife, and he loses it on site. And then he tells me, "Oh well, I was so tired from working at that site too much." So technically, it was you and Anthony that made me lose the knife. I'm like, that's what he was getting at. And I'm sitting there going like, are you kidding me, dude? So Anthony, you scheduled him too much over there, and I allowed it. So
and if that wouldn't have happened, he would still have
the
that
knife would have been
that
still
that
there.
you gifted
Yeah.
him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's your fault.
But I mean that particular, it's a construction company that he does the watchman work for, and they allow him to have an apartment and stuff. So it's like, I mean, it could have been in the apartment, like. You know, it's like he said, "Oh, I left it in the," and then he goes on to tell the story that he left it in the porta john.
Well, if he left it in the apartment, then it would have been the company's fault for letting him have an apartment.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but it's our fault
because like
somebody's got to be blamed, but not
it's-
him. He
if
cannot
it's-
be the blame.
it's like, well, I mean, it has to be like your fault or his fault or the company's fault because if it's not, then then it's my fault.
And that can't be.
Yeah, and that can't happen. We can't have that. It's got to be like someone else.
Yeah, you got to have other people to blame, man. You can't be. I have a friend who did a lot of time. This is a true story. He got caught with LSD probably 25 years ago, and he did 5 years. So, what it was is like the this is a true story. Like the pants, and I know this because the guy that he told me. He stayed the night at another friend of ours, and he didn't have the girl that he was hanging out with took his pants.
What?
She took his pants. So they had a swimming pool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a true story. I'm not gonna say his name. It starts with an E. You might know who I'm talking about. He used to be good friends with your stepdad. This happened at his place. So there was this pool, and his girlfriend or the girl he was dating, whatever. She what's going on?
Just the strangest thing. I could have swore like I'm having deja vu about the last time that we told this exact same story. And I know, but like I have this memory of like us sitting here, you telling that story, and last time I had deja vu too.
I had deja vu earlier today. Really, really bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on with that, but
I've been out of it since last night.
So this story's crazy. Like, okay, so this girl, and this is weird. Like, and this isn't like paranormal, but it is kind of weird because, like, how does this happen? So he's not a big guy. He's a little Hispanic dude, and he's only like 5'4", 5'5", little guy. He's not small. He's not like Beto size, but he's small.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Beto's another friend of ours. But so he ended up with this girl, and she went swimming, and she had these shorts, and they were like cut off booty shorts basically. And I remember I was there that night when this went down, and she ended up like taking his pants. Like she's like, and left her wet shorts hanging up and said, "Hey, I'll get them from you later." Cause they were pretty much dating. They weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, but they became boyfriend, or they were becoming boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so he ends up taking a pair of pants from other guy that I'm not gonna say his name, but the other guy that was staying there. He says, "Hey, do you got a pair of pants I can use?" So he gives him a pair of pants, and he doesn't realize in that little small pocket was just one in the little foil deal was one hit. And so he gets pulled over speeding in Georgetown, which is the county seat of Williamson County.
Not Georgetown.
So Williamson County, and they check in that little pocket and they
Yeah.
find it, and they were like, "This better not be what we think it is." And E is just going like, "That's not mine. These are not actually my pants." They're not going to believe that.
Yeah.
They're not going to believe that at all. And he's like,
That's what they all say, pal.
yeah. So he calls our friend, our mutual, me and your dad's mutual friend, and tells him to tell everybody, "Hey, man, I'm going." They gave him 5 years for that.
God.
5 years. So while he's in there, he's locked up for a while. And like, you would do on state prison, you do about 2.5, right, on a 5-year sentence if you behave. And he's pretty well balanced guy. He wasn't no fighter. He wasn't always getting in trouble, but I guess prison changes people. So some person that goes in might not be the person that comes out. I know several guys that have done that.
I mean, I know for a fact.
Yeah, for sure. And so he comes out, I hadn't seen him in like 5 solid years. So he gets out and I'm like, oh, what's up, dude? He didn't really seem to change much, but of course I wasn't hanging around with him every day. And he's at the club, and then late in the night, he starts telling us the whole story. And I was like, I had already kind of pieced it together because I had talked to the other guy, and I said, dang, that's cold-blooded, dude. So, we kind of impressed upon the other guy, hey, man, you need to take care of this guy's commissary. You need to help him with the free world stuff because this dude's, it's your fault,
Yeah.
But the guy goes in there, he gets into a fight, and he catches another case, an assault charge while he's in there. So he got another 5. So he ended up doing 5 solid years instead of 2.5. So then he gets out and he wants to beat that guy's ass. But like I explained to him, I said, okay, like he took care of everything financially and he set you up when you got out. So to me, it was like, it's done, right? But he's like wanting to get even because he had to do another 2.5. And I said, yeah, but you got into a fight. But then his point was this. He kept saying, well, I never would have been there if this dude hadn't done that. And the dude was just like, look, I'm absent-minded. I left it in my pocket. He goes, that thing must have been in there for a year. Probably got washed multiple times, but it had enough on it from the foil protecting it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like this powder they put on that paper. It's just I don't know, man. Best case or best, solution to all of that is don't go to jail. Don't do drugs. I mean, that's just as simple as that. I mean, that's probably the best thing you could do is just not do drugs. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's so weird because I was talking to a guy who he's a former gang member. Okay. And I met him through the guy whose story we're going to talk about tonight. And it's so weird. I talked to him and he got approached when he went back home. He did 7 years. I'm not going to say for what. His name is Danny. He's willing to say his name. I'll say the first name. He did 7 years time. And when he got out, his buddies were like, hey, you still owe us money. You need to do this. You need to do that. So he ended up moving out of state. He went clear across the country to get away from these guys. It was in Mississippi. And they were banging there, And so he moved to Texas. He lives here in Texas now. He lives down in Houston, the Houston area. And he got a job doing, construction work and stuff like that. And he got to know one of the security guards there. And him and one of the security guards witnessed something that was pretty crazy. But, he did 7 years. And he could have rolled all over these people. And then he gets out and then they want to tell him, hey, you still owe us.
Yeah.
And then people are expecting him to be, because he's black, they're expecting him to be like, well, you need to be, this way. And he doesn't lean that way, like he's politically.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I've changed my life. I'm doing this. Why would I want to be that way? And he's not voting, of course, but it's just crazy, So somebody had said something in the comments section about I couldn't vote or something like that. Yes, I can vote. Because as an adult, I never did time as an adult. So the crap that I got in trouble for was like minor crap, like fighting in public intoxication. I got in trouble for littering. Yes, I got arrested for littering. And because the cops didn't like me, and they were trying, these 2 cops in particular. And so they were trying to get me for anything. They'd follow me around like stalkers. And then I got arrested for fighting the best, what's it called? Disturbance. What's it called? Disturbing the peace. Yeah. It was like some kind of,
well, if you were homeless, you would have gotten away with both of those.
Yeah, so didn't do time for any of that. I spent the weekend in jail, and then they're like, okay, you can go. Gave you a fine or whatever. It's like the lowest charge. I mean, stupid things like that. And so I never was a felon, okay, because I wouldn't have a security company if I was a felon. I wouldn't be. So they give you a federal background check every year. They used to just be state. It was county and state. And now it is federal. So that is, the littering thing. And the when they got me in the back of the paddy wagon, he forearmed the shit out of me. And then they threw me on the ground and kicked me when I was laying on the ground. And so I got up. And when I got out, it was two of my friends contacted internal affairs and told them what had happened. And they checked the cameras, and sure enough, it did. And I didn't want any trouble with them, so I didn't press charges or anything. And I just said, and they're like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "I'm sure. I don't want any trouble, you know." So they left me alone after that. And in fact, I was buying some shoes at Academy, and one of them was there, and he paid for my shoes. It's a true story. You know, and he ended up being a basketball coach, and I was working part-time at the coaching, you know, and I coached the team out of Pan Am, and he was a basketball coach, and we actually became friends. And I would like run and get food, or he'd go and get food, and we were coaching the teams together, or whatever. He just didn't like me because of the club and all the stuff and whatever, and he had a hard on for it. And no, Andrews, I never told that story. I think I might have said one time that this guy did time for, but I never told that story. Not the one that Anthony was talking about having deja vu on. So earlier today, I saw something that I've never seen before in my life. And this is no BS. This is crazy. I was driving with my wife. We were coming back from PetSmart, you know, because we have a lot of pets. So we had to get pet food and, you know, yada, yada. So we're coming back and we're talking, and I see these two girls in the pool that they're coming from, and it's now in our neighborhood. We used to do security there. And actually, Anthony, you and Zane worked that pool. And Tony, your mother used to pick Zane up from that pool when he had to do it. So years ago, like 15 years ago, something like that. And God, it's been that long. Or maybe 14 years ago. I saw these two girls, these teenage girls, like running across the road, and they weren't like in any danger of being hit. The last car had come. So they were on the median, and they began to run across the road. And I'd looked over because we were having to turn right there. And as we were pulling up to that turn, I kid you not, I'm not even joking, man. They started to kind of move in slow motion. Like I have seen that, like when you're in something's happening to you and it just kind of happened, you know, you're right there. But like to just witness it from a distance, somebody just like they're running and then they slowed down and they were moving like this. And I was like, so like I kind of blinked and strained, and then they ran normal again. And I told my wife, I was like, "Did you just see that?" Like she's like, "No, I was looking at my phone." I'm like, "Dude, those two girls just ran, and they started running in slow motion when they got toward the curb, and then they picked up speed again." And I was like, "What the freaking heck?" Now I get people who tell me this kind of stuff all the time. I probably got a dozen stories of people seeing people moving in slow motion. Just right off the top of my head, I could probably tell you because I looked it up pretty quick, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember like a bunch of them." And we have a file on that, like glitches in the matrix, but then that is broken down into like 6 different categories, and one of them is that. You know, I made it myself like a couple years ago. So that is weird. That's a weird thing. I don't know what the freaking heck is going on here today, but I saw that, and then today. Literally today, somebody had just told me that they saw their dog moving around the backyard with a double. That gives me the chills, even like it's crazy. I mean, it wasn't like a story. It was just like a brief encounter. A guy messaged me from Missouri, and he just says, "Dude, Kansas City, Missouri." He's like, "I live in Kansas City," and unfortunately, he's probably a Chiefs fan. But no, you know. But I don't care really. But I'm just kidding. But he says he looks in the backyard. His dog is a lab, golden retriever lab mix. And her name is Shelly, and she's 7 years old. And he's like, I see 2 of them. He's like, and I'm looking again, and there's 2 of them, and then there's just one. And then it's just, I run outside, and I'm like, so that's what he said he saw. I mean, I'm not going to argue with him. I mean, that's what he said. Said he's got several other stories he's going to send me, but that's the only one that he sent so far. That was today. I just got that one today. And I'm going like, what is going on here? And that story, it happened last Monday. So that's weird. And it was right before the show last Monday. He goes, I was getting ready to watch your show. He watches his show. So It's crazy. And his name is Josh. So shout out to Josh. But it's, got a lot of weird stuff. I mean, you know, it's happening. Like a lot of weird stuff is happening. You know, I mean, I was talking to another witness the other day. This guy's name is Darren, and he was telling me that his story is really pretty creepy. But he was telling me that he has these dreams where he's like, he leaves and he's like in another reality. And he was really hung up on that. The one it came up in the group on the Paranormal Roundtable page and the Paranormal Roundtable group. If you're not in those, go check them out, get involved. But one of those, it was the guy who was in prison. We talked about it on the show because everybody was talking about it in the group or the page, whatever.
Yeah, he slept like 12 hours.
Yeah. He was a black dude. He slept like 12 hours, and he was a white dude. And you know, I mean, he was in prison.
Yeah.
When I talked to this guy, because I met him through another friend of mine who did time with him, and he told me, I go, so what is it like being white as opposed to being black? His joke, not mine. He's like, well, my credit is better. And I said, he goes, well, yeah, but I just got out of jail, so I don't really have credit. So, but that was his joke, not my joke, bro. And but he went on a health kick. Like he went in, and as black people, they call it the sugar.
Yeah, diabetes.
You're getting diabetes, right? And so he said, he goes, I had the sugar. I went in, and he goes, and I went on a health kick, and years later, I got out. I'm in perfect health. He goes, I'm healthier than when I went in. He went in, he was strung out, you know. But yeah, good for him. So tonight, story tonight we're going to talk about. We have 391 people. We're going to get started, you know. So a bunch of weird stuff going on, man. A bunch of weird stuff happening. It's just all over the place. It's happening. And so tonight's story, I'm just going to have to tell this. It revolves around a guy named Bevan. That's all I can tell you. They call him BD. And when he was young, he ran around with some undesirables. And it's kind of this is kind of funny too. I mean, like he tells me he's several years younger than me. He's 42 years old now, but he's changed his life completely. He was there's the weird thing. He grew up outside of Tupelo, but he was like, and then he spent some time in Vicksburg with his grandmother because he was always getting in trouble. And so they sent him away. But it was when he moved to outside of Vicksburg when he was in Mississippi. And he had this encounter with something that his grandmother, and this sounds very much like my friend Theo. Y'all know Theo. And his grandma is very, like, she's the one that told us all this stuff about the haint. They call it the haint, the black people in my hometown.
Yeah.
And the Mexican people call it the hombre lobo or the cadejo. You know, white people just say it. Looks like a werewolf. Just what it is, you know. But everybody's got their own like little interpretation and story about how it came to be or what it is or why it is. And so this guy's grandmother told him, you know, he grew up out in the country, but it wasn't like when he was 13 years old, he was getting in trouble. And he was hanging around with these people on the bad side of town, and because his family lived right on the edge of town. So like if you faced one direction, 200 yards was town. You could go to the neighborhood where he was hanging out, 200 yards. If you go the other direction, there's nothing. It's just the woods. And this is in Mississippi, right? So there's a lot of reports of stuff in Mississippi, but he ended up like going to Vicksburg and living with his grandma. And where she lived way out in the sticks in this kind of swampy area. And so he was 14. He had been living there for over a year, and he had been spending summers there for a long time. And she took him in because his family, they had 3 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys. His one brother, he's the oldest, but his one brother was very impressionable, and they wanted to split them up because the other brother they felt like wasn't going to cause problems. So they took the one boy and girl, and they went to go live over there. The 2 oldest, the 2 youngest stayed with the mom and dad to get him away from that neighborhood. And then a few years later, his dad ends up getting a better job, thank God. And he ends up moving to another place there in Mississippi, or I'm sorry, in Alabama. They moved to Alabama where some relatives lived, and in Montgomery. and he gets a better job. And of course, he goes to live with his family in Montgomery because his grandmother had gotten really sick. So they moved her to go to Alabama to live there too. She was determined to try to stay there in Vicksburg, but he didn't want to stay there. And I'll tell you why. He said he was getting involved in gang activity and all kinds of stuff up in Tupelo. But he said, dude, when I went down to Vicksburg, there was another thing going on. He said, number one, his grandmother's property, which was 10 acres. Okay. And she had this 10 acres that belonged to their family since the Civil War. Her grandfather was one of the only black slaves. It was a field hand, like literally, who could read and write. And his name was Elmas. And Elmas had the ability to read and write because he was taught by one of the house slaves. This is the story that he told. And he said that so he was able to, when they gave him the 40 acres and a mule, that really did happen. Now, some people don't believe that they really did that. No, they did it. Yeah, they did it. But then the carpetbaggers came down and they're like, let me tell you something, boy. How about you sell me that 40 acres and a mule? I got a shiny $50. I could buy you a couple drinks in the local saloon. Let me tell you. And they're like, this sign right here. And I'll give you a couple more of these, and they're like, okay. Because they don't even know what the heck they got.
Yeah.
They'll look at it. Look at this contract. You have 40 acres, but it ain't going to last. In 2 years, it'll all be gone. So if you sell it to me now, you'll keep it because you'll have some money. And then you won't not be liking yourself in no time.
That's all going to disintegrate, boy.
All this
Might as well sell it
that's
to
the
me.
vegetation, basically. Watch the hand.
Got some fire water.
Sit
for
without
you.
him. And so, but these people didn't talk like that. They actually talked like Yankees. So they'd have been like, hey. But it was horrible what they did. They came down and they literally just essayed the South. I mean, the whites got, and there was a lot of racism from the Northerners. People don't realize that because the Southerners were accustomed to and used to being around the African Americans. The Northerners came down. They were like, ew, why do you have these people around?
Yeah.
So they got treated really bad when they went up north too to go work and be free. Nobody wanted to hire them. Nobody wanted to give them jobs. So they ended up in ghettos. And so down in the South, you probably had a better deal. I mean, you figured like Reconstruction created a lot of resentment though too. And I think it was done by design. And I think the federal government had a lot to do with that because the Civil War was really not about freeing slaves to me. If you read between the lines and you really do the math, what it was about installing the federal government and the arm of control of the federal government. And I think that after the war, Lincoln was a decent person. I think he really thought like, hey, we're actually doing the right thing here. We're going to do this. But he had his constituents around him and they had no such plans. They were like, oh, Lincoln, you really want to help people. We get it, but we don't.
Yeah.
We want to make the Federal Reserve. We want to control everything. And we used you. And we're the same people who have been doing it throughout history. So, well, sorry. And so they got Wilkes Booth. And Wilkes Booth, I don't think he was like a major player. I think he was a patsy. Booth, and if you go do a deep dive on him, he had some family that was living up north, and I think that they took him. Like I think that they told him like, "Hey, do this or they get it," because he had no reason to do it. They say, "Oh, he was a Southerner who was, whatever. He was this or that," or some people would say he was like a copperhead or whatever. I don't believe any of those theories. I think he was literally cajoled into it. There was no reason to do it. Because Lincoln's plans were to help the blacks if they wanted to go back to Africa. They had Liberia. And then he wanted to give the Southerners a fair shake. Like he was going to put them back on their feet and then make everything. And so that didn't happen. They killed him. And I'll tell you right now, it's so weird how they do these things because years later they killed Kennedy, right? And look it up. Look up the similarities between Lincoln and Kennedy, and just look it up. Look it up. And so I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I'll tell you a few of them. Like, so I know Oswald wasn't the only one involved in the Kennedy assassination. He wasn't the only shooter, but he ended up going to he hid out in a theater after he shot him in a library, like, or whatever. He was like in a book, whatever. And so he ends up shooting him and then going and hiding in a theater. And then it was the opposite. Book shot him in a theater and then went and hid, and it was like, so there's all these weird, like, little deals there, It was like 100 years apart, wasn't it?
Yeah. So here's an interesting little tidbit. So it says both presidents were elected.
Repository.
Both presidents were elected to Congress in a year ending in 46. Lincoln in 1846, Kennedy in 1946. And then they both had their presidency in years ending in 60. Then Lincoln in 1860, Kennedy in 1960. Both particularly concerned with civil rights and made their views strongly known. Each president lost a child during his time in the White House. Both were succeeded by vice presidents named Johnson, Andrew Johnson for Lincoln, Lyndon B. Johnson for Kennedy. They were born 100 years apart. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They're both shot on the Friday in the presence of their wives. It says both men were assassinated by men with three names: John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, each name comprising of 15 letters. Mm-hmm. Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theater. Kennedy was shot in a Lincoln car made by Ford. Lincoln was shot in the theater and his assassin fled to a warehouse. Kennedy was shot from a warehouse and his assassin fled to a theater. Both assassins were Southerners and were themselves killed before being put on trial.
Yeah. And Oswald was a devout member of the Communist Party. He had even renounced his citizenship and gone to the Soviet Union. Why was he back here? That's a whole nother story. And
also, Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy who allegedly warned him not to go to Ford's Theater. Mm-hmm. Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln who warned him not to go to Dallas.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Both presidents were second children and had a family of 3 children, losing 1 child while in office. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
And then if you stop and you look at it too, they both had dreams of their assassination. And both of them, they believe that the vice presidents were involved. And they were. My opinion, it is what it is. I'm going to tell you this, though, too. I'm almost certain that it was the same people. Time is a loop, isn't it? It really is. And you're observing and you're watching and you basically see it happen and you can't stop it. What sucks is when you know the outcome of something and you deal with people and you tell them, hey, this is what's happening, and they don't, I've always been one of those people that's been called upon to be a leader and to stop certain things with people, between people. And those people don't always do what they're supposed to do. They'll turn around and go and tell the other person later on, after you did them the favor of stopping that person's predations, and then they'll be like talking bad about you with that person when they didn't have the balls to tell that person anything. But they expect you to do it. And it's like, man, I've been called on that so many times in my life. I was talking about that today with Nellie. It's like I didn't want to. I didn't plan on trying to be a leader or be the head of security at the club. I didn't plan on any of this when I started working and built my company, and then I sold it. The first one, I was like, I don't plan on. I just wanted to work and just be left alone. But in order for things to work, I had to step up and take a leadership role. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Same thing in this community. I just got into this to just do the show. I didn't plan on trying to be a leader in this community. That was never an objective of mine, never. And I don't care what anybody says. They can lie to you all they want. It's not what I wanted. It's not even what I want. I just want to be left alone and do our show. But we have to be, and like I said, if it wasn't for my friends, I never would have been involved in all these conflicts, these wars that I've been forced to kind of deal with, And it just, you're called upon to do what's right. I think Kennedy and Lincoln both were called upon at different stages of history to do what was right. And I think they both knew. And there was a part of them that knew they were going to take it. They were, because you can't make change against these evil people. But it's like they say, you got to, you want to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. You can't affect change unless you're willing to take it. And one of the most powerful groups on earth, Kennedy, was against them. And then I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to tell you about Nixon. Nixon was not a bad president. He was not. I know everybody remembers him as, I'm not a crook, and he kept saying that he wasn't a crook, and I believe him. What I'm going to tell you, though, is I studied him intently, and the Nixon tapes, he was paranoid, but he had a reason to be. Just because you're paranoid don't mean they're not out to get you. See, I'm going to tell you something about that guy. He was onto them, and when he said he wanted to do two things, he wanted to audit the feds. Oh, yeah, and then he wanted to audit Fort Knox because there's no gold there. Don't let him lie to you. We don't have any gold. We sold it to France.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, if you read these released Soviet documents, they'll tell you everything, man. I mean, they don't care. I mean, the Soviet Union is dissolved. So they come out with these documents that come out like periodically, and they tell you like word for word, like who they think did what. And Nixon, the thing about Nixon is he didn't want to do some of the things he ended up doing, and he demanded to see the gold in Fort Knox. So getting us off the gold standard, he had to do that because think about it, folks, there's no gold.
Yeah.
And he knew that. So they had just shot a president, not even, a decade, whatever. There's no way that they were going to be able to shoot this guy. You can't kill two sitting presidents one after the other, with what? Who was in between? Like Johnson, I mean, like you don't have enough, there's not enough distance, you know what I mean? So you kill one president, it was horrible and they got away with it, but you kill another one that's asking some of the same questions. And I think the coup de grace for him and his political career was when he wanted to open the Kennedy files. Did you know that? Nixon wanted to open the files to the Kennedy assassination, and he demanded it, and they wouldn't do it. I think it's because he wanted to know what they were going to do to him.
Yeah,
because he was like, this is ridiculous. There's no gold in Fort Knox. We're on this Federal Reserve, which is like this piggy bank. And he said some things about some people that, would be considered.
He had some choice words to say about Bohemian Grove.
Like he did. Yeah, he said things about Bohemian Grove, and he said some things about people who are from the Middle East that aren't Arabs. Okay, yeah. Let's put it that way. He said some things about them, and that was not really something you should have been doing. So, and Kissinger, I think, set him up. I think Kissinger was like, hey, man, we got to do something. He was the most powerful person in politics at that time in the American politics. And Nixon was highly interested in alien contact, too. And so you have people who were all over this guy. They wanted to get rid of him, and they were like, hey, he's talking, he's saying things, and he was a little Trumpish, way before his time, and so they got rid of him. And then they got this goofball Ford who would have been the worst president if Jimmy Carter hadn't come along. And then Jimmy Carter would have been the worst president if George Bush Jr. hadn't come along. We fooled me once and you whatever. And then Biden came, and Biden says, hold my ice cream. And there's nobody there. Biden, sir, Joe, it's on the other side.
Who are you?
The ice cream? No, it's empty. And he drops it on this, starts eating it off the ground. So, you look at these people, and it just got progressively worse. Like Ford would have been the absolute worst. Well, there was a couple guys way back there, but I'm not even going to get into who they were. But, I mean, these were terrible presidents. They were horrible. And if you think that people like Trump are the first people, no, look up Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson opened up the White House and had a big old party with his friends, all from Kentucky and Tennessee. And they just came in and they set up horse troughs and got naked and had a big old party and drank moonshine out of horse troughs. You think I'm joking? They bathed in it. It was crazy.
Man, dueling the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And he did it multiple times.
Andrew Jackson, was also, he fought at the Battle of New Orleans. I mean, the guy was like a legend. He was not, thank you for that donation, man. He was not like your normal president. He was nuts, and he had a lot of enemies. But, you look at his presidency, and some of the people that were his enemies, they were like, it was like, F you, what are you? They're like the people that hated Caesar. They were career politicians that were lining their pockets. This guy was a war hero, and he was a tough guy, a real guy. He actually investigated the Bell Witch. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
Andrew Jackson, you can look it up. He actually went to because he wanted to confront the Bell Witch. And when the Bell Witch started screaming at him, he's like, F this, and he left. He's like, there's some things that are just not meant to fight. Because he wanted to fight everybody. He was a tough guy. He would go into a local bar and just, and one of the things he said he regretted was becoming the president because nobody wanted to bar fight him anymore. True, man. The guy was a tough dude, man. He didn't give a shit, man. It's like Davy Crockett. When Davy Crockett, he was he was on the Senate floor and he told, he was in Congress, and he told him, he says, you can go to hell and I'm going to Texas. And they're like, so what are you doing? He goes, I'm abdicating this seat. I don't want to be here. He said it was a den of vipers. And when he was going to die the night before at the Alamo, he was one of the people that gave a little speech. To this day, we don't know. It's only speculation. And there was only 2 people that lived from the Alamo. But their story is that him and Jim Bowie gave, and Travis, Colonel William B. Travis, that they gave these rousing speeches. And one of the guys from Tennessee that was with, what's his name, Crockett, they asked him, they said, they were looking out over the campfires of the Mexican army, and they said, we're going to die tomorrow. And he says, yep. And he goes, do you wish now that you would have stayed in Congress? And he's like, no, because I'm going to die amongst honorable men, not around a den of thieves, snakes, vermin. So take that one to the bank. Now they struck that from history, but don't forget, I took Texas history as a kid and I read that. So you can change it all you want, but it's there. He said that. And so they're like, oh, no, he didn't call us that. You're lying, son. Why would he say that? Congress is good people. We're good people. We're here to help you, Hank. I'm telling you. Yeah, right. Whatever.
A respectable institution.
Respectable institution. Why would we want to steal money from everybody? I mean, we go in, our salary is $135,000 a year, walk out with $40 million. Career politicians.
It's just good business, son.
That's some good business there. That's all I'm saying. So, anyways, back to the old South here where we're at, Vicksburg, right? Right outside of there, okay? Well, several miles, actually. But he had to take the bus to school, dude, and where he went, he said, dude, it was desolate. He said, Granny lived in the middle of Nowhereville. Thank goodness his sister, Shamil, thank you for getting him on this show. Bevan, it was an honor talking to you. I really enjoyed talking to you, man. I hope your son keeps on with the ball and does good. Keeps his eye on the ball and does what he's got to do. He's hoping to go to JUCO and get a spot playing ball, and I think that he's going to do it. So shout out to your son. I hope he makes it. But here's what Bevan told me. He said, dude, he goes, I was a youngster, and I was running around with a bad crowd, and I was hanging out with these older guys over there in Tupelo, and I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And they were already trying to initiate me into this gang. He said, luckily for me, my dad stepped in. He was a workaholic. So was my mother. And he said, they're like, that ain't happening. So they took a strap to my ass. And he goes, and then they sent me to live with my grandma. Now, he's several years younger than me, but he's almost 43. He's not really that much younger. He's 6 years. But, he was one of those people, like he had that. He's like, I was very impressionable. And he's like, and I wasn't a good listener. He's like, and the first weekend that I was there, my granny had a party for me because it was my birthday. He goes, and I was so mad at my parents. I said some horrible, mean things to them. He goes, and now they're both deceased. And he's like, and I regret the things I did and said, during that time of my life. He said, I apologized many times. And he had the nickname B-Dog. His last name's with a D, so they called him Bevan, B-Dog. And I couldn't help but laugh. I was like, B-Dog? He goes, I know, dog, for real. It's corny as hell. He goes, I was stupid. He goes, I go to this new school. I go in there, and I'm like, I'm B-Dog. And they're like, oh, really? Because we don't give a crap, And so it was this small school. It wasn't a big school where he was at, whatever. But he went there, and he was in trouble. Like he had to go to, as soon as he went to that school, he was there for like 3 days, got into a fight, got sent to this school where you try to, I forgot what he called it. Like, what you called it was like something like, where you go and it's like accelerated learning. So you can catch up to your cohort group.
Oh, yeah. There was a name for that.
There's a name
it's some
for it,
kind
but
of program where they grease you through.
So he got in trouble a lot. So he ended up in that school and he ended up like having to do all this, And eventually he ended up, his grandma just got frustrated with him, but she was tough as nails. And shout out to Granny because she took care of business. And she yanked him out of school and homeschooled him so he wouldn't be around other kids to cause problems. He said the cool thing about that was, he goes, I just did school for about 4 hours a day. He goes, and I'm not a stupid person. And by talking to you, you're not a stupid guy at all. I could tell. So he aced it, and he was like, he would turn in the work. And he says, and I went from being like a C- student to like an A+ student because I would do the same work that I was supposed to be doing. He's like, but I did this accelerated learning and I caught up. And so he was able to just do class like 4 or 5 hours a day, about 5 hours, I think he said. And then he worked through the summer, and it was a lot of work, but he caught up, and his grandma would turn the paperwork in to the school, and then they would grade it, and then they would talk to him, and he would go in and take like a test every like 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. And that was it. But he said it gave him a lot of time to do the things he wanted to do, which he got into the habit of going hunting. He saved up his money all summer working, chopping cotton of all things, which is hard as hell. Your grandmother and, my mother, she chopped cotton along with all of her sisters. They all chopped cotton. It was horrible. It was just summer every year. But my mom said they paid her pretty good. So my mom was a seamstress at one point, and she did that too part-time every year during cotton season. And everybody around Taylor would grow cotton. So my mother would go and she would chop it, And so my great aunt did the same thing, and she would go and pick everybody up, and then they would go out to the field and chop. But my great aunt, her business, she ended up starting her own business doing seamstress work. And then the rest is history. She didn't really have to do it anymore. But my mother did it for years. And so Bevan did that. And he worked all summer. And his whole goal was to buy a couple of full pure blood coonhounds. And he said, dude, he goes, down here in the South, and he talked to me like I didn't know. Because, for some reason, Bevan, okay, your sister turned you on the show, but you thought I was from California. And he said, I know you over there in California. I said, bro, brother,
ew.
I said, brother, ooh, I'm from the South, brother. And he goes, oh, really? Because you don't have an accent. I said, yeah, no, I know. No, it's nice. I said, look, what it is that you don't understand something. I said, I know where you're coming from, bro. I said, we used to hunt a lot when I was young. But he told me, he says, I wanted these coonhounds. And this is now, folks, I'm going to put a disclaimer on this right now. I'm going to tell you this. Okay. The show, first and foremost, is for entertainment purposes. Okay. Right. But this is going to get kind of gruesome. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, this is what this man told me, but if you are squeamish or you have something is, it's going to make you feel a certain kind of way, like you're going to feel some type of way, like emotionally, you probably will feel that. But if you're going to have a problem, then I suggest you turn away right now, because what happened to this guy is, we've recovered a lot of reports of this kind of stuff before, so it's not like it's something new, totally. But it had me, what did I tell you the other night, Anthony, when we were doing the patrol? It had me emotionally invested, and it kind of tore at my heart, tugged at my heart, tore my emotions up.
Kind of like this past Tuesday's episode.
Oh, God. So kind of keeping in the theme with this past Tuesday's episode, we decided to talk about this. We talked about the Bigfoot attacks on Wednesday. Well, here's the Dogman attacks, right along with it. It's just messed up. Okay. I'm going to tell you that right now. But what this young man went through he's not a young man now, but he was a young man, he's middle-aged now. You would not want to wish on anybody. This poor guy, like his happy-go-lucky life was turned upside down. He was 14 and he worked all summer this 13, year. And he ended up saving up enough money, and there was a local breeder there that had these coonhounds, and he wanted them because they actually in the South do eat raccoons. I personally never have, and I don't, but I know people who have and who do. I've never actually met anybody who eats possum though. I've always heard possum stew and all this stuff. I've never anybody eats possum, but I know people who eat squirrel. My own brother hunted squirrel.
Squirrel, yeah.
I would never do it after I did that one time I did it. I just couldn't do it again. I couldn't do it to a squirrel. I couldn't hurt him. But it was just one of these things where, hold on one second, get my notes over here. Oh, let me get the teleprompter. Some people said that Anthony's Googling everything. Actually, I say it out loud for Anthony to Google something. There's nothing hidden here. These people, man, they need to go on a sabbatical and not come back. So what ends up, well, they already did, I guess. But what ends up happening, he saves up, so he goes to get a coon hound, one, like singular. And he found this male. And he buys him, and he names him Bubba. About a week later, Bubba is just a pup. He keeps moaning and groaning and being kind of melancholy. And his granny says, old Jed is her dog. And he goes, my grandmother claimed he was 20. He goes, I thought he was 30. Jed was barely breathing. He's like, in fact, I took my grandma's vanity mirror up under there to see if the dog was still alive. She's like, old Jed's getting old. He's like, she had a little chow dog. And he goes, they called him Champ, and he was always outside running the streets. And he's like, she should have had him neutered. That's what I told him. I said, she probably should have had him neutered. Probably would have been a better deal. But he was not much of a dog. Like for her, he was just out roaming around, and he'd come back to eat and sleep on the porch. And so he wasn't much good for anything. And she's like, but and Jed, the hound that she had, he was just old. He was on his last leg. And he goes, and after my first summer, Jed sadly passed away when these two were just pups. And I say two because he went back to that guy, and he says, hey man, he goes, I saw you at the feed store the other day. Or he was talking to the wife, and she says, your husband says that you guys still had a pup you couldn't get rid of. It was a runt. And so she said, yeah, she's got this like a hip problem, and we're thinking about, we're just going to put her down, or we're going to, maybe just, and she's like, well, I'll buy her. And so they made him a deal, and they gave him the puppy for free. And exchange for a few favors and work around their property and whatever. And he helped them out and did some stuff for about a month and just helping them. And then they gave him a little money, and they gave him the pup. She did have a hip problem, but he goes, it was crazy. He goes, like, I put this stuff on him that my grandmother had made. He goes, and I don't know what it was because I was young. I didn't pay attention. He's like, and I'd rubbed it on her hips for like 2 months, and she started to walk better. And eventually, he's like, after about 6 months, these dogs, it's like you didn't even know that she had that problem. He's like, but I was told that it could come back later in life as they get older, like a type of hip dysplasia. I don't know what it was he was putting on the dog, what kind of salve he was putting on her. But she ended up panning out and being okay. And so they ended up, when he was, so he had these dogs for about 2 years, and he got really attached to them. And then he would go out in the woods, and every now and then he would be out there. He would hear footfall. He would hear footsteps, and sometimes he would hear growling and whooping sounds. And then he even heard like these weird, ungodly howls. His granny told him, now that this is in Mississippi, but the same thing, just like in Louisiana, they called it the rougarou. Now we all know that it's the lougarou. But the pronunciation just became
that Cajun pronunciation.
That Cajun rougarou. And so she's not Cajun, she's not Creole, but it's Louisiana and Mississippi. They're right there next to each other. So the legends amongst the black folks were, it was the rougarou. And she says you need to be real careful. She's like, there's more than one creature out there that's not a normal animal. And so one night he asks his granny. There was the first weekend he was there. He goes, and it was like, I asked my grandma, about these stories because I had heard the adults talking. And he said that these were the kind of stories that when these adults started talking, the younger people were told, go into another room. They didn't let you sit there and eavesdrop. Go play. Go do something else. And these were the kind of stories that the adults would talk about. And amongst the black folks there, they would talk about these creatures and these encounters that people had with these things. Now, I know, talking to some of the black people in Beaumont and in Hearn, Texas, I interviewed them. One of them face to face years ago. And they gave me a story about the bunny man, the black bunny man, which was this creepy guy. It was kind of like Papa Legba. He just appeared, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is, and I got to take a drink, man. I am, because my throat, man, it's so scratchy. Do you have any of those lozenges?
I don't know what else would be at.
Underneath this right here, possibly. Yep. Thank you, Tom. Hold on one second, folks. Give me a minute. Oh. Can we get me one? So, it's rough. Thank you for bearing with me. So, some of these people, they have these legends and these stories, and some of them, they're okay. The kids can hang around, listen, whatever. But then some of them, they don't, and they're not really allowed to. And he said, Grandma, I heard you guys talking. We said, Granny, I heard you guys talking about this this Rougarou. I want to know more about it. He's like, I've heard some weird noises outside my window. And she told him, she says, look, you're old enough to hear this, and you need to hear this. She's like, and I know you want to go out hunting and roam around and do stuff. And she's like, and that's fine. That's what you do when you come here in the summer, But when he would go in the summer, he'd have his brothers and sisters with him, And so he wasn't the main focus. He was just one of the kids. And then some of the cousins would come too. And one of his cousins, he really couldn't stand. His cousin's name was Clyde, and he didn't like him at all. And they lived in Louisiana. And his family on his grandmother's side was actually from Louisiana, but they weren't Cree or anything like that. But they were from eastern Louisiana. And his cousin Clyde lived right across the border, and they would come to visit in the summertime. And so there'd be several kids there in this house. And it was a big house. They had that house. It was over 100 years old by the time he was living in there. And he said, he's like, his grandmother, it was just him and his grandma, and she had this big fireplace going, And he said she was real sick at times, and she would get cold. He goes, it could be summertime, and she'd be getting cold, because her blood circulation was really bad. And so she had like this blood disorder, and she would drink vinegar on the doctor's order to thin her blood.
Yeah.
And then she ended up taking Coumadin, which I know what that is. And so she had this, but he goes, dude, she hung on until I was grown. Like she took care of me, And he goes, I always remember her. And so she said, look, son, I'm going to tell you something. She called him son, even though he wasn't her, he was her grandson. Or she'd call him Sonny. And she said, look, Sonny, she's like, there's a creature out there that I saw when I was 17. She's like, I saw it again 10 years later when I was 27. And then I saw it again when I was 33. She's like, 3 times in my life. Never seen it since. She's like, twice it liked to kill me. And now that's a story for another time. But she says, you need to stay away from the certain spots out there. She's like, in particular, if you go across, now we'll just call them the Lexingtons. That's not their names, but yeah. She said that if you go down past the Lexington's farm and you cut across them 200 acres of them cornfields, she's like, and you go into that holler right there, she goes, you ain't coming back. She's like, that's where these things are. But he remembers as a kid going up in there, and they were chasing some raccoons down into the creek, and it was Jed was mobile and whatever. He was a good hound dog. He's like, and my cousin Clyde had a nice dog, and he was envious of them. And he's like, everything was about, how good you could hunt. It was so rural, how good you could farm, fish. It was like living off the land. And that's how you were judged. And he goes, and I stayed away from town. I didn't want trouble, And he's like, and my grandma just let me come to town with her until I was older, until I was, 17. I never went to town without her. And he's like, and it was healthy for me. It kept me out of trouble. He goes, and I went back to visit my parents every couple months, and stay with them for a little bit and then go back. But he goes, I really loved living out there, and I loved it just being me and her. He goes, I didn't like it with these, his words, not mine. He said, when these other suckers would come and stay, I get mad.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about his cousins. Then he goes, especially Clyde, big head. Apparently Clyde has a big head.
Big head Clyde.
Big head Clyde is that's what I said. So we'll call him Big Head Clyde. He says he's big head, nothing in it. And so he said Clyde would come and he had this nice coon dog, So they went out into the holler. Well, they weren't supposed to. And Clyde swore up and down that he saw a creature that looked like a man wolf, as he described it. But they dare not tell their grandmother because she had told them, I took a switch to your back if you disobey me and you don't stop going down into that home, I'm going to get you. And his parents had told him, they're like, Granny, don't play. You need to not be doing that because she will whip you. And she did. She whipped him a couple times with the switch. And he said that she didn't play around with that. And he went down into that holler the first time he got his first dog, Bubba. When he got the second dog, he named her Stacy. And I was like, why? He goes, I don't know. I couldn't think of a female name, so I just named her Stacy. And he goes, she was such a sweet dog. He goes, she just followed around whatever Bubba did. And he goes, so we went down in there and Bubba's whining and looking at me and trying to come back. He goes, and then what saved me, and he goes, and to this day, I still think that dog was way too human. He says, I look back and there's Jed barely walking, just gently walking toward them, half blind and going, and he kept doing it. And I'm thinking, whatever's down here is going to be gone because this dog is making all this noise. He goes, and then I heard like this crashing through the brush, something. And then I heard into the creek. So whatever it was a steep, like 8-foot embankment. And it just jumped down into it like it wasn't nothing. He goes, and I turned and I looked. He goes, and I got my rifle with me. He goes, and I got a big old hunting knife. That's it. He's like, and I got a few cartridges, but he goes, I don't know what this is. And he goes, and I can't see it. He goes, but my dog started whimpering and went between my legs and was growling. He's just a pup. He goes, and then we got old Jed back there that's about 10 yards away. And what are they going to do? They can't protect me, So he's like, let's get back to the house. And he goes, and Jed was so far behind that whatever was back there in that holler, he goes, I didn't want to have to deal with it. He goes, so I went back and I picked Jed up and I carried him back to the house. And then he goes, there was my granny. She's there, dipping snuff on the porch. Just like my friend Theo's grandma. That whole generation, different, just made different, bro. Tough people. And she says, boy, I done told you, you hard-headed. She's like, bad enough you don't comb your damn hair. Now you're going to be down up in that hall. I done told you. I know that's where you were at. She's like, Jed went to go get you. I tried calling him back, but he wouldn't listen to me. And she's like, and your granny's got a swollen foot. I can't do that. She's like, you do it again, I will whip you. Now, he never got whipped for doing that again. He got whipped for doing something else, taking her car. He took her car. And he said, okay, Granny, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. She's like, boy, it's for your own good. And he whacked me upside the head. And I went inside. She goes, go in there and comb your hair. Take a shower. Clean yourself up. We're having dinner. And then his uncle came over. And his uncle came over and he said his uncle was useless, dude. Picket fence teeth is what he called him. And he'd sit there and eat biscuits and gravy and be like, oh, that's awesome, mama. And then leave and not be worth a plug nickel. And so this is his family. And he got me to kind of just really good at telling the setting the stage, for what had happened. And he said that his grandma used to make this cream corn. And she made it with this gravy, like it was the gravy. And she put the corn in it, and it was really good. And it had me hungry thinking about it. And he's like, and then she'd make these grits and all this other stuff. And he goes, big old meal. It's just two of us. He's like, but when I got Bubba and Stacy, he's like, well, they were part of the family. She'd feed them like they were humans, right? And he said that Granny's like, we need to change this dog's name. He's like, I don't want to call her Stacy. I feel like I'm talking to somebody, he figured out his grandmother had a friend that she used to go play bingo with all the time. And she quit going into town because her friend's name was Stacy and she didn't want to be reminded of it. So she changed the name. And so he goes, I didn't choose this name. He goes, my granny chose it. He goes, so don't make fun of me, whatever. But she called her Sparkles. And I said, really? So he says, yeah. He goes, so it was Bubba and Sparkles. He goes, and I'd still call her Stacy sometimes because she decided to make the switch 2 months after so we had to choose a name that started with an S. So she said, how about Sparkles? And he goes, really? Fine. We'll name the dog that. He's like, and so they were outside one day and the outside dog, he came, he was kind of a dud, like he said, but he would play with them as puppies and be kind of rough with them. But she would say, let him play. Because Jed couldn't do it. He would just sit there barely breathing. And this dog would kind of toughen him up a little bit, And he was mean. He was a mean dog. He fought all the time. You'd see him coming back from wherever, and he goes, and she had a tomcat that was just as mean, and all they did was fight each other all the time. He goes, and it was like, you'd hear them just clashing outside, and I go out there and be like, what's going on out here? And he goes, and the tomcat would chase the dog into the shed, and then he'd come out and chase the tomcat up the tree, So it was just back and forth. And Champ didn't care. He was just a mean dog. He just wanted to fight. And so he had a buddy that would come around too. There was a Doberman, and she's like, "Oh, that's the Lexington's dog, but I feed it too because it just hangs around here, So one day he goes out hunting. And something threw a rock at him. And he knew it wasn't someone, it was a something. And he goes, and it threw it and it nearly hit Sparkles in the head. He goes, and I look, and we all look, and the dog started growling. And these dogs now, at this point, me and my one friend who lived not far from it, and he goes, I called him Denzel. That was his nickname. And I said, why? He goes, because he looked like him. He's like, he looked like a young Denzel Washington. I ain't even joking. Sometimes we'd even trick people. We'd be at the McDonald's or something, and then they'd be like coming up to him and looking at him, kind of like, But then they knew it wasn't him because he's too young.
Yeah.
And so he goes, he just looked like Denzel. So I called him Denzel, and he called me B-Dog, He's like, and so Denzel and me were out hunting. He had his dog, and I had my two dogs, and he said it was bliss. We just had a great life. He goes, I had kind of a thing for Denzel's sister. So any chance I got, I'd be over there kind of at their place trying to, and she was just like, fool, she didn't want nothing to do with him. Eventually he wore her down. So that's a good story there. And he's with her now, but he wore her down. He goes, I got her. I wore her down, and he goes, I would tell her all the time, why don't you like me? And she's like, I don't like people who act like you, who look like you, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, what? Am I too dark? He would always tell her, darker the berry, sweeter the juice. And she'd be like, I don't want to be squeezing it all day. Like she was a real firecracker, right? So they were just, they were all good friends. And these were the people that he kind of associated with. He didn't deal with town folk much. And she had the right idea because she didn't trust him. She's like, you went to school for 3 days, got into a fight, and ended up having to do school at home. You ain't the kind of person that my daddy's going to want me dating. And he was right. He goes, I had to prove myself. He goes, but the one thing I could do was hunt. He's like, and I could catch raccoons. And he goes, there was this big old raccoon that I'd seen down there in this bottom area. But he liked to run into that holler, and I wouldn't go in there after him because Granny had told me not to. He goes, and then one day, he's like, I find this raccoon, and it's hanging up on a tree branch. And it's just the skin. The entire animal had been taken. And he's like, the only one that hunted in that little area there were the Lexingtons. They were a white family right there. And then Denzel. So he's like, I asked them when I saw him, I went on to the Lexington's property and I said, hey, were you guys down here hunting near the bottom? And they were like, no, we haven't been messing at all. We've been farming, And the one boy was kind of his age. He was like, yeah, I'd love to. And he went hunting with him sometimes too. He said, so it wasn't them. So I asked Denzel, and he was like, no, it wasn't me. They're the only ones that would have been out there. But this thing was like pulled right out of the skin. He goes, I was aggravated. I was like, I'd been trying to get him for a while. And now you got to remember, folks, this is country people. They're not, they're not squeamish about shooting a raccoon or a squirrel or whatever, because they eat what they kill. And I can respect that. And they had a goat too. It was a she goat, and his grandma was really attached to her. And I don't know her name, but anyway, she came up missing one day, and he heard the dogs outside barking, going crazy, even though Jed was going nuts. And his two dogs were outside, just shrieking and howling. He goes out there. There's the Dogman, the neighbor's dog, that thought he belonged to them, and then Champ was out in the yard. He was the alpha, and then his two dogs were now, a couple years old. He goes, I had them trained very good. I had all of them trained except for Champ. He was a little jerk, but he goes, the other ones were great dogs. And it's kind of like that sometimes with dogs. You'll get one that's really, really smart. He just ain't going to do what you want him to do. So anyway, it's one of those things where he goes, at this point in time, he goes, I should have really, because I didn't fully believe that there was something there. I like, it's like, there's something there, but you don't see it. So you don't really believe it. So you kind of put it out of your mind. You feel it. It's coming. Something's going to happen. And here's what happened. He goes, that night, I didn't know that the goat had gone missing. I thought that the goat was still tied. I was half asleep. It was 1 a.m. I went back to sleep. He's like, I had a dream. And in this dream, he goes, I was up on top of my grandma's shed out there with the gardening supplies. He goes, and this creature had me pinned, and it was staring at me. It wasn't snapping, growling, or because I asked that. He said, no. It was just staring up at me, and I was staring down at it. He goes, and all I had was a garden hoe, and I was like swinging at it, and it would just step aside and move. And it was like telling me mentally, not talking to me, and telling me, come down. Come on down here. I got to tell you something. He goes, it kept wanting to talk to me. He's like, I want to talk to you. I want to tell you something. He's like, I don't want to talk to you. And he goes, and I kept talking to it back and forth, back and forth. He goes, and I said, what did this creature look like? He said, it looked like how you would think of kind of like a Bigfoot. And so this creature turned to walk back into the woods, and it says, I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to want to hear this, but I'll be back tomorrow. And so sure enough, he goes to sleep the next night. He has the dream again, only this time he sits up in bed, and it is a dream. And he says, I look out the window, and by the moonlight, I see this ugly, what looked like a demonic gorilla, as he described. The only way he could describe this ugly gorilla-looking creature. And it said, can I come in? And he says, no, you may not. And it says, that's okay, because in a few days' time, your whole world is going to collapse. And I said, it said that? He says, yeah, it was like it was telling me basically that I was doomed, like something bad was going to happen to me. And it kind of gloated about it and then walked off into the woods. And so he goes, I began to pray. He goes, I only prayed with my grandma. He goes, and I was a believer, but I wasn't like a real, like devout, He goes, I believed, but it wasn't like I was a true, hardcore believer.
Like
Paying lip service. Exactly. He says, same thing with the whole legends and stories of Bigfoot and these Rougarou out there. I didn't believe any of that. He goes, so the next day, he's like, I went out into the woods and I took my two dogs with me. He goes, it was a very fateful day. I had no idea what was about to happen to me. He's like, I get down into that bottom where I would go hunting, and I see this raccoon almost as big as that one that I had been stalking for a few weeks. And he goes, and it was like in the water, and it was like running, and it just ran right past us, like it wasn't even paying attention. He goes, and I look, and it's just gone. And then I turn and I look, and right there at the mouth of the holler was this creature, and it was kind of hanging on a tree branch, and it let go, and it dropped down, and I could hear the ground of the water. He said when it hit the water, the bottom of its legs sort of lit up. And so when I was talking to him, he says, you've seen the movie Predator, right? And I've seen all of them. He said the movie where it was the Jamaican guy where he was going to fight him.
Oh, yeah.
You remember how he was in the water and his legs kind of went, And he goes, I'm there with my dogs, and there is this creature standing in the water. He goes, and you can't see the feet, and it's just splashing, and you can kind of see what looks like electricity just up to the knees, like the water was making it do it. But it was like this shimmering look, like the cloaking we've talked about. And he said that this is something that Shamil told him that we had talked about on the show, which is one of the reasons why he wanted to tell me his story. And so it just kept walking towards him and walking towards him. And he was like, dude, it got closer and closer, and I got more and more stiff. It's like, I should have turned to run. He's like, and my dogs, who at this point were about 2.5 years old, they were very protective. The boy, male dog, Bubba, got in front of us. He goes, and my female dog, she wasn't a big dog. He's like, but she was pulling my pant leg. I was wearing these overalls, just pulling my overalls. He goes, and I'm staring at this thing, and I'm like, and I couldn't move. He's like, and I leveled my gun at it. He's like, and it was so fast. It happened so fast that this thing just charged, and it was right on me. And the gun was like, it took like its front hand. You don't remember which it was, right or left, but it just took it and then like yanked it and threw it over its shoulder like that. And then the next thing you know, it lunged at him kind of like a wolf. And he hears this pow, like this popping noise. And then he sees when he gets knocked backwards, he's still got this scar on his chest. He got it ripped open his chest, nearly cut the pectoral muscle off of the bone. And it sliced him open a good 3 inches, and he was bleeding profusely. And when he was laying on the side of the embankment, he was kind of struggling because he was like the wind had been knocked out of him. He said at the same time, he felt this kind of punch to his side. And when he described it to me, now him having never boxed or been in, that kind of a confrontation where, have you ever been hit in the liver? Like, it is brutal. Yeah. Like, I've been hit, and it knocks the wind out of you, but you're on the ground. And I have a high tolerance for pain, but I was on my knees, and it was in practice, and I was just like, and you can't, like, you ever heard that song by, what's that song where he says, I'm breathing in the chemicals, and he goes, like
Imagine
that?
Dragons song.
Imagine Dragons. Yeah. What's the name of that song? It's the one with the puppets or whatever.
Someone in the comments will answer it.
Somebody answer that. But yes, it is just debilitating. And that song, Radioactive.
Yeah.
Radioactive. And dude, whenever I hear that, that's how I sounded when I was at Montopos Recreation and getting punched in the side. The first time I got hit in the liver like that, I was 17 years old. I'll never forget. Hold on one second. Sorry about that, folks. I had to sneeze, and I don't want to sneeze all over. So it was so bad. He goes, dude, and I felt that. Like, he goes, and when you're in that moment and you're on the ground, he goes, I was writhing in agony, and I didn't even feel the gash on my chest, and the rip went down all the way through his nipple. I mean, he's got this horrible scar now. He goes, it's awful. He goes, and this creature, I'm staring at this in disbelief. It's a 7 foot tall. He said it wasn't super tall, but it was wide. He goes, and if you look at this creature, it was probably, this is what he says. He said it was probably 600 pounds and 4 foot wide.
Jeez.
And he said it was about 7 foot tall, and the shoulders were massive. He goes, and it looked like an ape had babies with a gorilla, with a wolf. He goes, but the back kind of looked like a bear. Like, it was like this big hunch on its back. He said, and the muscle would move kind of like, it was weird, like the way it moved. It was just bizarre. And now here's where it gets kind of graphic. And of course it stops at 666. Give me a break here, dude. Come on.
Every time.
Really? So he says, this is where it gets kind of rough when we were going to talk about. And he said that the boy dog, his male dog, he kept saying, the boy, the male, it was real quick. Like, it went pretty quick. Mm-hmm. It stood in the way, and it absorbed one of the blows, and it was just laying there, and it was on the ground, and its stomach, it had been ripped open. So it was laying there. So it happened so fast. He said, and my little female, she ran over there and was like laying on top of me, growling and barking at this thing. And this creature just walked over to her, just swayed side to side, kind of ape-like, and just reached down and grabbed her. And it bit onto his hand. It's a he because it was a male. And he said he took it and just flung it into a tree. And that was, you know, and so he's like, it just had enough energy. He goes, and I grabbed my gun and I went to shoot. And this thing just took the top of it and yanked it again and just pulled. And then the gun went off. He's like, but it just threw it up in the air. Now, here is where he should be deceased at this point. He should have been gone, right? But remember, there are a couple of other dogs, and he goes, I thought that dog was the most useless, most worthless animal ever. He goes, and here comes these 3 dogs into that water. And he's like, and I didn't even know who the other dog was. Jed was deceased. So there was this other dog that came. And this is where it gets kind of weird. He said that well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There was a 3rd dog there, along with Champ and that Doberman. And he found out by talking to the neighbors, nobody knew who that dog was. But he said that this dog was white, all white. And he goes, and he was big, and he was like, the way he described this dog was humongous. It was like a Pyrenees, or possibly even a Caucasian shepherd. And so they got in between him and this creature, and they started to fight with this creature. And he's like, and I just remember starting to go unconscious. I started to pass out because I hit my head on the rock, and I put my hand back there. He goes, and it was getting dark, and in that holler, it's kind of dark, you know, but we were at the mouth of it. He's like, and I could see the blood, and he goes, and I got to get out of here. And I looked down. He goes, my shirt is ripped. He goes, my chest muscle. He didn't call it that. He calls it something else, but he says it's like hanging down. Yeah. He's like, I need to go to a hospital bad. And he's like, and I look up, and there's one of these dogs on his arm, another one on his leg, and another one's going off biting him. And he's like, Champ had some friends, took his backyard friends, you know, just went, you know, and went at this thing. And then it just swiped, and the Doberman was gone. Like it was over. He's like, and then it started to just turn and kind of walk back into the holler. Then it turned and it would fight back and growl, get on all fours and lunge at him, and then go and turn. He kept fighting, but retreating slowly but surely. He goes, and this white dog, he goes, I don't know where it came from, but he goes, this dog was going off on it. It was going toe to toe with it. And it was biting it. And it even went for his you know what I mean? Like, it bit him in the crotch and backed up and was like, he goes, this thing was letting out these howls and these roars, you know? He's like, and it was weird when this was going on. He goes, I remember this too, Wolf. He goes, I heard these whoops and hollers going on in the distance. He goes, and it was like there was something else there in those woods. He goes, I didn't want to wait around to see what it was. It was getting closer. He goes, and so I was like, you know, in case this thing has friends, I don't know anything about this thing. I just know that my grandmother had seen it a couple times, and she said it was evil, it was mean, and it was wicked. It would kill you. That people and pets had gone missing over the years. People had seen it going all the way back into the 30s. And so he got himself up, and he says, I got my gun was now broken. He goes, and I kind of used it as a makeshift cane just to lift myself up. And I got up out of that water. And he goes, and I walked up to where the embankment was only like a couple of feet. He goes, and I just laid there for a minute. And then I kept hearing the noise coming from the holler. I thought, if I don't leave, this thing's going to come back. And these dogs were licking me and trying to be, you know, supportive. He goes, and I look over. He's like, and I see this bastard. He called it a bastard. Mm-hmm. He goes, go, and it grabs my male dog. And my male dog had enough in him, my boy dog, my Bubba. He was, at this point in time in the story, he was actually crying when he was telling me this. He goes, my Bubba reached up and bit that bastard. And he's like, and I wished I could have shot it, you know. He goes, and then it backed up, and then it just drug him out into the holler, you know, and he was a goner anyway, nothing he could do. And he's like, I was just tears in my eyes, crying. I wanted to kill this thing. He's like, and I couldn't. There's nothing I could do. He goes, and I got up and I looked, and my little female, Sparkle was laying there on the bank, and there was nothing I could do for her. I walked over there, and she was just kind of slowly wagged her tail a little bit. He knew that her back had been broken. There was nothing he could do. He kind of tried to pick her up and she yelped real bad. And he's like, so I didn't want to leave her. He goes, so I sat there. He goes, and Champ, who was kind of banged up too, and this big white dog, they kept kind of nudging me, you know, like they were trying to get me out of there. And I could hear the bones of my other dog cracking and popping. This thing wasn't even that far away, and it was already devouring it. And he goes, and then out of meanness, maybe spite, he goes, I don't know. He goes, I heard what I thought was a laugh. And he's like, it was a very human, guttural laugh, like a demonic laugh. He's like, and this was no, you know, it wasn't a figment of my imagination. He didn't, my words, not his, but he said it wasn't my imagination. So it wasn't a figment. He's like, I know what I heard. I heard this thing doing that. And so he's like, I'm sitting there on the embankment. And he goes, and I couldn't leave Sparkle there. He goes, I just was crying. I was crying. He goes, and then the Lexingtons came. The dad and the son, they came down, they heard all this noise and screaming, and their dog had gone crazy. And one of their dogs would play when they were puppies. They would play. They had a coon dog too, and they would play together. So he would, you know, he was like, she came down and jumped down. It was in the water and running around in circles. And the Lexingtons came down and they were like, are you okay? And so they got him up. They literally had a makeshift gurney that they had used. They kind of carried him back to their farm. He didn't realize, but he had a big gash going down his back and all the way down his butt cheek, all the way down his leg, and his hamstring was torn. So he was really in bad shape. They got him to the hospital. And at the hospital, they classified it as a bear attack and then later changed it to a dog attack, or a dog attack, bear attack, whatever. And because of the description of the creature, they said, well, it must have been a bear. There's no bears there in Mississippi. And he kept saying, this is ridiculous. He goes, dude, this was a damn werewolf. That's what it looked like. He's like, the ears were tall. It had this big old head, this oversized head, a big old snout. It was black. He said it just looked like a gorilla, bear, wolf-like creature. And he goes, it had these big old claws. He goes, the claws were more bear-like. You know, because the tear on my body, he goes, it looked bear-like. They took some photos, and but he said that this thing was horrible. It was the backward bent legs, everything. So his granny goes to the hospital. His parents show up. They show up. He's in the hospital for a few days. They get there, and he's being, you know, given morphine and everything, and he's just kind of out of it. And so they all started talking, and his dad had said, look, you know, ever since I was young, there was these legends of these things. He goes, and my mother, your grandmother, had seen them. My uncle had seen them. He's like, but we stayed away. You know, we just stayed away from the holler. He goes, and you got too close. You know, son, you shouldn't have been there, you know. And so the Lexingtons had decided that they had had enough of this shit. And that was Mr. Lexington's exact words. He's like, enough of this. He's like, our grandparents have been going through this crap, and their parents have been going through this crap, and now we are. And this thing had literally unalived like 36 chickens in like less than 20 minutes on their farm. So they were pretty aggravated. It also killed one of their milk cows and was probably responsible for the female goat going missing that night. The Bigfoot type creature, I'm not real sure what that was, and I'm not sure that he knows what it was. He thinks it was just like a demonic spirit that was mocking him because it knew that thing was out there. Now, the young guy, he's about 2 years older than him, from the Lexington family. I'm not going to say his name. We'll call him Patrick. But Patrick had been out there in that area and had seen a creature that ran up and smacked the tractor when he was farming. And this was like, you know how they had those old tractors that they're not in a cab. Yeah. It was his grandfather's tractor, and he was putting it back in the barn, and they were getting ready to sell it to a farm down the road that needed some extra farm equipment. And this thing ran up and it like shoved the tractor, and he almost fell off of it, but it was very much like a Bigfoot type creature. And the description of it was different than what he had claimed he saw in his dream. So he don't know what that was. I don't know what that was, but this thing got down on all fours, kind of like a primate, and ran back into the woods. And, but that was not the creature that Patrick encountered. 2 years prior to Bevan's encounter, he was with some friends and they were driving down a back road, and he had a really fast car that he was driving, which was his cousin's car. And get this, he lost control. The gravel road that it was on was kind of steep, kind of rounded, on both sides, and it rained a little bit. He lost control. They went off the side and they flipped, and they went in skidding into the barbed wire into the pasture, tore the tires right off of the thing. But miraculously, everybody lived. Nobody was hurt too bad. They were wearing their seatbelts, and luckily they weren't going super fast. He said, we were only going about 35. He said, we would have been going faster, we probably would have died. And he's like, I lost control of it. I was trying to manual shift, whatever. My cousin was trying to teach me, and we weren't playing around too much. We were just, And so he ended up going up underneath into the pasture. Now, while he's in the car, he hears footfall that's really loud, thunderous, and he knows there's a bull in that pasture. The country people, there's always bulls. I cut across a pasture one time out there in between Rockdale and Lexington. So that's a town, right? That's why I thought of the name, Lexington, to call them that. Their last name starts with an L, that's why I said Lexington. But I was walking and I thought everything was fine. And I look about 100 yards away, and there's this very, very angry Charlemagne bull that just decided, you know what? I'm not doing shit. I'm going to kill you. How about that?
Nah, they're more afraid of you than you are of them.
I got about 20 yards to clear. This thing cleared that 100 yards real fast. And I was just jumping, and I could jump. I got some ups. Now, y'all know. I could actually slam dunk a basketball. All right? I could slam dunk a basketball. Okay? I got some ups, right? So I'm not like a high jump champion. I'm not Alvin Harper, but I could jump. Right? So I ran, and I jumped over that fence, and my legs I was up as high as I've probably ever been. And I looked back and I saw that bull just kind of like that. And he was rubbing up against that barbed wire, but luckily it was hot. And so it shot. That means electrical, right? For the city folk, don't know what that means. It's a hot wire. So luckily for me, it shocked the shit out of him, and he backed up and was kind of like, and I jumped over. And this is a true story. I thought this was funny, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. Whatever, I'm good. I'm walking. I'm like, yeah, I got it. I looked down. There's a copperhead right there, almost where I landed. It was more interested in getting away and not striking me. And then I look up, and there is an Angus bull right there, just right there. And so he was kind of chewing. Then he just saw me and was like, oh, you're in my enclosure. And then he just starts running around the other side of this metal grate. And so I took off running, but I didn't have to go very far, about 15 yards, and I jumped that fence, and I was over it. And I got back on the gravel road real quick, because I had a flat tire, and I left my bike there, and I was going to go back to the house and get the truck. My dad had one of those little GMC S10s or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Chevy S10s. I was going to go back. So I went and I got the keys, stuck in the house. I went and got my bike and got the bike and drove back over there. Man, I'm telling you, though, I used to play with bulls all the time when I was young. I'd always mess with them, and I'd mess with them spurring roosters too. My great uncle had one named Nick. It was mean as hell. We were talking about it the other day at Uncle Jimmy's, and my cousin Kim, we were talking about it. She remembers that damn thing, and I'd mess with him all the time, and he'd come running out just he was a turd. And so we would challenge each other. He would jump, you try to grab him, right, and hold him. And so he can't spur you, but his legs would be, so you have to grab him like this. You have to hold him there's a certain way you got to hold him, right? And we were stupid enough to try. And my cousin did it, and he got the shit spurred out of him, dude. So sit you do on the ranch/farm, because my cousins there, they had 200 head of cattle. So they also had 500 acres of farmland. So they were hybrids, ranchers, farmers. Back in the old days, you were pretty much one or the other. And now, right now, I know what it is, because we got some cows out there at the ranch, and we got this guy who is supposedly a rancher/farmer. He ain't got no cows. Stop lying. You have some farmland up the road, and you're trying to take our water. That ain't gonna happen. Sorry, boy, it's not happening. No, I'm not playing that. So get out of here with that bull crap. Anyway, that's something for us to deal with. But You see what I'm saying? Like I know what it is. People say, well, I lived out in the country. No, I grew up out in the country. Like I grew up out in the country. Like when you say country, I'm talking about animals and stuff. Land, animals, you know. My Uncle Butch has 100 acres of farm, and he always had cows and sheep and everything else. He had hogs, you know. We always had animals, and I just grew up around it. I grew up around it. That's how I was just raised. Just because I don't wear cowboy boots and a cowboy hat every day here in the city, because you'd be kind of weird driving around doing patrol here, and these homeless people be like, "Oh, you Willie Nelson, man?" You know? Yeah, I'm Willie Nelson Mandela. How about that? Yeah. Well, so you see my point, right? Right. So anyway, you got these situations that come up when you're dealing with animals. You have to take care of them and keep them from predators. And these people were going through some crap, right? Now, in Mississippi, we've heard over the last decade or so a lot of stories coming out of that area, Mississippi. And these people had this creature that walked right up to their vehicle. They thought it was a bull because of the way the ground shook. Because if you've ever been around a bull, and y'all have, them bulls, they can make the ground shake.
Yeah, it's like a tremor.
It's a tremor, and they're like, boom, boom, you'll feel it. And that's what happened here, but it was slow and steady. And then they just feel it, boom, 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 and the car was kind of moving. And then,
what that was?
What the heck?
Something outside.
On the second floor, though.
That was weird. I heard over there, then over there.
Yeah.
Anyways, a lot of weird stuff here in this building. So they end up, you know, feeling the ground shake. He's in the driver's side, and he goes over, and he's smart enough, cognizant enough to try to roll the window up, which he did. He succeeded, even though it was electrical. This thing, he could see its legs, and it was gross looking. It had these man-like paw-like. He's like, it was a mixture of like human feet with wolf paws. He goes, and then it walks around. He goes, and he's upside down, but he can see this. And of course, this is not ancient times or whatever, you know. His cousin had a cell phone. Cell phones weren't as widely in use as they are now, but he had one, and he says, hey. You know, and so they end up going, and people will come and get them. Well, there are 2 or 3 trucks that came out there to get them because there were 3 different people. I just saw a flash of light. 3 or 4 different people who were their relatives, you know, 3 or 4 different families. So that, because it was his friend, his cousin, and his cousin's girlfriend. So their families, they all just showed up. And one of them, his cousin's girlfriend's mother, saw this wolf-like creature run across the pasture. Now, there was a bull in that pasture, but they don't know where he was at. He wasn't around. And they were like, well, you heard this thunderous noise. Sure it wasn't the bull? And they were like, no, it wasn't the bull. He goes, this was something else. Something came into that pasture, and he goes, and it walked right up to the car. He goes, I saw the legs on this thing. I saw the legs. He's like, I know that this thing was not. Now, he's a couple years older than Bevan, and plus this was a couple years later, and when this happened. And, you know, so, you know, he was like 19 years old or something like that when this happened. He wasn't a little kid. He knows what he saw. And they were like, well, maybe because you had, you know, hit your head, whatever, but his.
It sounds like someone dropped something.
Yeah, that was weird. So his cousin's mother, she saw it, and she was just like, I don't know what this was. She's like, but I know that it wasn't a normal animal. She's like, and it wasn't a wolf, but it was big like a wolf, and it was on all 4s. And the person that was in the seat behind him saw the legs too. And that would be his friend. And his friend, like, his name is Garrett, and Garrett saw it, and they all saw it. And they were just like, what in the hell? What was that? And so he got together with Bevan, and they got a friend of theirs who was a really good artist, and they have a sketch of it. And I don't have it. I haven't gotten it. I needed to talk to him and try to tell him if he had gotten it from him. I've been super, super busy. I didn't have time for that. But they do have a sketch, and he said it was pretty close to what we both saw. He goes, and so now he goes, we have this artist's rendering of it. He goes, and it looks like what I saw. He goes, it's kind of got this weird, like conical look on the top of its head, and then these ears that go straight up on the sides like that. He's like, but it's kind of, but it looks like the hair just kind of is streaking straight up, but it's almost like a big mohawk on its head in between the ears. And he goes, and then the head is just like this huge, rounded, massive head. And he goes, if you would kind of think that if it didn't have fur on it, it would look like a gator's mouth.
That thing's hideous.
Yeah. So I talked to Bevan about this, and I actually interviewed the one of the Lexington children, the daughter of the Lexington family. That would have been Garrett's sister. Garrett is overseas right now. He's in Australia. I don't know what he's doing there. I didn't ask, but she was like very forthcoming. She saw this same creature in the barn that had unalived, they believe, one of their horses. She had a mare, and she had a foal, a colt, and it was not very old. And this poor thing had gotten taken and drug out of the barn. She managed to, this is a tough lady. She managed to throw some bullets into that sucker before it finished doing what it did, but the horse had to be put down. It couldn't be saved. And so she was going out there to check on it because she had heard some noise. And there was a pretty ornery stallion that was there, had almost kicked his way out. And he was trying to, I guess, attack this animal, creature, man, whatever the hell it is.
There you go. Kick it in the face.
Yeah. And so they also had a donkey. She said, we had a donkey. Her name was Angel. And she's like, Angel was so sweet. She was one of those, like, just really kind animals. And she was genuine. And he goes, she said that donkey would protect the other animals. Angel was just like, they called her that because she was like a guardian angel. She would protect the hoofed animals, and she was friendly. Her favorite little buddy was their basset hound. And she's like, the basset, I can't remember his name, but the basset hound was her friend. And they would, she would play ball with him. She would nudge the ball and everything. And they found her torn apart, laying there dying in the pasture. And they believed that it was trying to go after a couple of the cows. And then the donkey came after it to try to protect them, and it unalived it. So this creature did all these horrible things. And here's what Bevan told me. He says that the sorriest part of this whole story, well, I'm going to tell you, he says, man, I go out there because I had to leave my dog behind, couldn't, he's like, this thing, like, basically messed with her body, like mutilated the body and left it hanging from a tree branch. He's like, and so I get out and there's my dog, down there. He goes, I went back down there as soon as I was healthy to see if I could find her, and she was there rotting. So that's why I said there's this very brutal information, but it's a testament to what these things are capable of and how awful these things can be. Now, we don't know what this thing is. Now, his grandmother had a friend named Otis, and Otis talked about this. He was actually Creole, and she knew him from Louisiana, and he came to visit with his girlfriend. And Otis had an encounter with one of these creatures in Louisiana. And the one that he had an encounter with was, and this is his story. And I'm going to throw this one in here as a bonus. Otis was 22 years old, and his son was attacked by something in the swamp. These people live way out in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana. And it crippled him. Years later, he died from complications of being a paraplegic. And he blames that creature. Now, he thinks that this creature wasn't a normal creature. This was, in his own words, a werewolf. Every bit of a shapeshifter. He goes, this thing was a warlock who had lived out in those woods and was capable of shapeshifting. Thank you for that donation. And according to Otis, what he believes was there was a giant raven, not a crow. He said, we have crows. This thing is like a raven. It's like, they don't even live in that area. He goes, so it was way too big. It was twice the size of a crow. And one of the neighbors there where he was from told him, this is down the bayou, you know. He said that they told him, these Cajuns, they said they saw this man jump off of the bank. Now, this is a secondhand story, right? But it's interesting nonetheless. And so what Bevan told me was this thing jumped off of the embankment, and before it hit the water, it turned into this black raven and then went up real fast. He's like, and this thing was huge. He goes, it was so big, in fact, that it dove down and grabbed like this 2-foot alligator that was on the bank.
Dang.
2 foot, not a big, it was a baby, but it grabbed it and took it and took it and disappeared with it. He's like, but it was a man. It was a man. He was wearing a white shirt and black pants, and he had long gray hair, and he had like a headband on, holding his hair back. And he just made this noise like, yeah, like that, like he screamed, jumped up over the water, and then before he hit the ground, he went up. He said that the man looked native, like he looked like he was a native, but he was a lighter-skinned native guy. And so he goes, these people told Otis that, and so they were the Cajuns that would go out there and gator hunt, and they were just like, what the hell was that? And they knew the stories of the Rougarou, and there had been some predation in that area, and these people had these I forgot the name of the birds. They had these birds that they raised, and anyway, they weren't turkeys, they weren't chickens, it was something else. But anyway, they had oh God, it's a normal bird. We just talked about those geese. Okay. Can't remember my freaking. So anyway, they had a bunch of geese, right? And then they also had taken some what they call guinea fowls. I don't know if you know what those are. He's like, and they had them, and they were raising them, both species. And these geese were very protective, very tough, or whatever. And one of those Cajuns' mother, this thing came out. The heck was that? Somebody honking? Hey, don't worry about it, man. Who cares? As long as it's not, you know. So this thing was very protective. It was a goose, like a mother goose, right? And it went out to try to, like, what's it gonna do, right? I mean, it can bite you, you know. I've had a goose try to bite me until I made friends with it, but she was trying to protect her. And I don't know her name. I just know that he was friends with these people, and this thing just took the goose and just took it, you know, snatched it up. And then they found this guy, the goose, hanging, like he had taken it, and it was hanging from this guy's house. And he had a little pier that went out into the swamp. And they found like the creatures that this thing had been, and he had a larder. And so when he wasn't there, they went in there and there were just bones everywhere. Like just bones. Like if he was a normal human being, he wouldn't be a bone collector. You know what I mean? This is crazy stuff. And so they knew it was him. So Otis said what they did was they laid in wait. And they see this most shocking thing. They see this thing crawling back on all fours going toward the cabin. He goes, and it looked like a bear. Now, in that area of Louisiana, there are black bears, believe it or not. And this thing was waddling back, and it was like a bear. And they were just like, holy crap. So they just, 3 of them unloaded on this thing. And when they did, it stood up and started to kind of morph. And then they hear this noise that sounds like a, you know, this weird, and it was like all these different animal noises coming out of this being, which turned into this sort of blackish ball, then turned into like a pinkish ball, and then folded out like silly, but his words, not mine. This is what he told Bevan, that it was like silly putty with arms. And then it kind of folded inward like a spider, like these legs, kind of like when a spider dies.
Yeah, like it wilts.
It wilts. And then they went over to it, and it was just kind of like bubbling, and then it became a man. And then it was laying there, and they were just like, oh crap, you know. And they didn't go and tell the authorities, like, hey, we dusted this guy because he came back, you know, skipping around in the form of a bear, you know. They were just like, you know, Mother Effer's dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. So they took him and they threw him in the water. And then they said that a couple weeks later, his bloated body was still floating around the bayou. The animals wouldn't touch him. The gators wouldn't eat him. Nothing would eat him. There's all these predators out there, and nothing would touch him. And so there had been reports of a black panther, too, that had jumped on some people when they were walking their mules through that area. years and years before, going way back. And this thing was man-like, and it unalived one of the mules and started eating it right there. And they were just like, they tried to stab it. One of them had an old Civil War bayonet and a musket. They shot right into it, didn't do anything. He just put a hole in it. So they think that this thing was at it for a long time, this shape-shifting warlock. So Otis gave his diagnosis of what he thought this creature was. He went out to the holler. He went out there, and he has this ability. Now, I need to talk to this guy. I plan on speaking to him on next Thursday. I have to talk to this guy. He has, according to him, over 50 years of experience of dealing with these, what would be called shape-shifting creatures. And he has actually gone to several places in the South, Louisiana, Mississippi, that area, to deal with these beings. What he says they are an order of basically warlocks who go out and they shapeshift and they become these creatures. And some of them stay that way. They lose their humanity to the point where they don't even remember what they once were. And they become the vessel for a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
We know what that is here at PRT. We know that vessel, what that is the other. That is what it's called. And I told Bevan that. I said, what you're dealing with, we are not unfamiliar with this here at PRT. Like Bain says, we are initiated. And so if you've been around the show long enough, you know what Joel, Gerald, Charles, and all these other people have told us. They were a part of these cults. And so some of these go off the reservation and they become these creatures. And there are some that are native that do this. Now, this guy that did this stuff down in Louisiana, he said there was another one that was down there near New Orleans, a little bit north of there, kind of off there by Slidell in that area. And he said that this was back in the 1980s, and it was one of the first ones that he had to deal with face to face. And it attacked his uncle's farm. And he said that it was just this little spot of land right there, and he had a little couple of acres, whatever. And he had a few animals, and he was living off the land, not bothering anybody. And this creature started coming and attacking and doing what it did. And he shot it one day. He finds what looks like a guy who's maybe half Creole, half native, kind of like kind of that skin tone with hair. He could tell by the hair that he was part black, whatever. But he was laying on top of a fence, naked. And the wound where he had shot was this guy. He literally told the authorities, and they went and they looked and they saw the guy, and they could not identify this man. Nobody ever came to claim him. They did find one of the animals that had been torn apart, but they thought there's no way that but it's his word against the dead guy. The dead guy's there. And he said, look, he's on my land. I don't know why he's here naked then, And so the authorities were like, well, he's either a crazy naked guy that attacked and killed, whatever. So they got him to agree to sign a paper that says that this guy came onto the property with a large dog. And this guy was naked, and the large dog unalived one of his goats. He says, no, that's not what happened. That is the guy that did it. And they're like, yeah, but this is a naked, unarmed man. Now, we believe that you saw something strange in the middle of the night, and you unalived this man, but it is just a naked guy, And nobody ever came forward to say who the guy was or whatever. According to Otis's own words, what he told Bevan, he says that his cousin, he's like, he did this. He's like, he told him, he's like, dude, he believed that this guy had been at it for a long time because their grandmother and their grandfather had encountered something very similar, and they believed that it was this Creole guy who was part native. His mother was native, his dad was a Creole. And that he was able to shapeshift. And not only that, but he could jump in and out of, I guess they called him, he could jump in and out of holes, which they didn't know what to call it. It's portals.
Portals, yeah.
And that they would see these green balls of light and he would jump out of them.
Oh, yeah.
But they were like these oval shaped, which would be like portals.
Traveling in them, yeah.
Traveling, yeah. And so they had this weird creature that was doing this stuff, but it turns out to be a man. Now, how long had he been this other creature? We don't know. We don't really know what, like if that is what these things are, is these people who practice sorcery, witchcraft, whatever, and then they end up, able to move in and out of whatever. Now, this reminds me of another story I got from a guy named Teddy. Now, Teddy had told me a story. Now, he's actually from California, Bevan, not me. All right, bro. So Teddy had an encounter with what we would call the devil monkeys. Now, he was in the Napa Valley. Now, if anybody knows the Napa Valley, you know that the Napa Valley is known for what? The rebobs. But these things weren't flying. They were running. And we've gotten stories from them before. And I referred him to an episode about devil monkeys. Like I said before on the show, I regret this guy told me a story about when he was a young teenager. And, of course, he's only in his 20s when he told me this. It was several years ago. And I thought he was crazy. He's like, oh, we were drinking, and I was like, how much? And him and his friend are kind of chuckling. They're all probably a couple of 12 packs, Old Milwaukee. I'm like, well, that's probably what it was. I didn't understand like how it worked at that time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so when you go back to those days when I was on that other guy's show and I didn't know, and so now knowing what I know, knowing that devil monkeys is an actual thing, but they were talking about these small dogman looking creatures running around the OBL. And I was just like, this sounds stupid. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
You live and you learn.
But this guy, Teddy, like he tells me this story. He says him and his sister and his girlfriend were traveling and they were heading up to Medford, which is, we talked about this the other day with Bigfoot Dwarf. He was a guest on our show. And we were talking about Medford and Eugene and all those areas because I traveled all up into those areas. And he said that they were heading up there and they were, involved in some exchanges, let's put it that way. And that their friends were growers up there in that area. They grew marijuana. And he said that they were heading up there and he goes, and my friend, we get out and we're at this like little overlook spot, I'm not going to say because I don't want people running over there because where they were at was real close to private property and they were a little bit trespassing. And let's put it that way.
Just a little bit. And
they were smoking. Now, just because somebody's smoking the devil's lettuce doesn't mean that they can't have an experience that's real. So they were smoking. He goes, and in fact, he goes, my sister hadn't even taken a toke yet. He goes, it was just me and my girlfriend. He's like, and she was like, what's that? And she points, and they see this thing out of the darkness hopping. It's like hopping, almost like a kangaroo, but like still kind of squat down. And it would get up, do it, and then squat down. He's like, and then they heard what sounded like a weird mixture of bird cackle mixed with hyena. That's the only way they could describe it. And they see two more of these creatures coming from the other side. He's like, and then we run back to our vehicle because we had walked off down this little trail and it was private property. And there was this valley you could see down. It was really pretty. And so they take off running back to their vehicle and they get pursued. And these things come up the trail and they are running fast. They look back and they're running and then they get down on all fours and they get up and they run. And standing as high as they stood, they were only about maybe 6 foot and they were thin. But they had these weird looking jackal wolf-like heads. And they had these scrawny bodies and they were making this weird noise. When it got closer, they sounded like hyenas kind of, and she said that we got into the car and then one of them ran right up to the window and just smacked it with its like weird looking claw and backed up and it had this weird wild look on its face. And they were just like making this noise and like going at them. And one of them jumped over in the back of the car and they just took off and they almost lost control and went down this embankment. But luckily for them, they got back on the road. They got the hell out of there. Now, this is a crazy thing. Like for like a week, like he kept having these dreams and like these creatures were coming out of the darkness and messing with him. And when they get up there to Medford, of course, the fun's not over. They get up there and they had to hire a couple of guys because somebody was going into their grow area and tearing stuff up. And they're messing with their houses and stuff. And when they got a good look at this thing, it looked like a Bigfoot. And he's like, dude, he goes, that was the most wild trip ever, dude. He goes, we get attacked by these weird little werewolf looking things look like they're on meth. He's like, and then we get up there, he goes, and I'm urinating. He goes behind one of these grow houses, and I hear this, and I can feel the ground kind of move. And I look up, and there's this dude just standing there staring at me. And he's like, there's only this much of his face is exposed. Everything else is just hair. He's like, and he's about 8 foot tall, and he's really big, and he's staring at me. He's just watching me. He goes, and I just kept staring at him, and he goes, and I was high as hell. I'm not going to lie. He's like, but I know what I saw, and that was a Bigfoot. And so he goes, I just backed away slowly, and he goes, and then it came charging kind of out at me. He goes, and right there where the spotlight came on, where he ran into, this thing stopped and then ran back out into the woods. And at that same spot right there where he was at, one of the growers, one of their friends who was a Mexican national that was helping them, went missing. And they never saw him again. And they thought, well, maybe he just didn't show up for work. And they don't know what happened to him, but they think maybe that those creatures up there got him. But yeah, so that was a horrific trip that Teddy told me about. And he was saying, look, he's like, if I hadn't seen all this for myself, I wouldn't have believed it. Years and years later, his brother had an encounter with something similar to what he saw, but not totally. It was outside of Fresno. And his brother said, dude, I was out there and I was hanging out with some friends. They live out on the edge of town and we were partying, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He's like, we go out into the backyard. He goes, and I see this thing, which it looks like it's laying down across the road. And beyond that is just this like little hill. And you can see kind of, off into this like small little embankment, whatever, like a glorified overlook, but a glorified hill, but it's not really. And he said, he goes, I see this thing and it just stands up and then turns and runs down the hill. He said it looked like, this is the way his brother described it, a werewolf that skips leg day. He said it had these little skinny legs and this kind of fat belly, weird upper body with like this ridge on it. And it looked hyena-like, but it was on 2 legs. And it ran down this embankment real fast. And he was just like, what in the hell did I just see? That's the only way he could describe his brother. Very wolf-like creature. He goes, and so he goes, I did some research. He goes, and my mother, he's like, my mother actually did the genealogy thing, and she found out that she was like 60% native, literally. And his mother is half Hispanic, half white, but she's like 62% native. So she's got it on both sides, in particular the Hispanic side is almost full native, and which is very common, by the way. And then his dad, who's white, is actually part native, like 10%, 12%, whatever. So that was, he's like, dude, so he got quite a bit of native blood in him. And his brother too. Now his mother would have these weird dreams and she would see like these shadow people that would come out of the shadows. And then they would morph into like humanoid looking shapes, people. And by the way, if I haven't said it, thank you for everybody who's donated and helped out. It really helps the show and keeps it going. And we really could use the help, but nobody's obligated to do anything. But anyways, thank you for those who do help. So this creature, whatever it was that he saw that day, his brother saw go down the embankment. He started to get the idea that maybe him and his brother had like the eye, like they could see things. Because when they were young, they lived in a haunted house and they would see this weird looking, what looked like a woman, but she would float with no feet, come in and out of a mirror in their house that they lived in Fresno. So weird, wild stuff, man. Creepy, weird stuff. Now, going back to Louisiana, Mississippi, this guy Otis talking to our man Bevan here and telling him what he knew. He says that this guy, that it did this to him, he very much thinks that he was a human at one time, but he probably was overcome with whatever, and he stayed that way, and he's pure evil now. He made it his mission. He went back 3 more times. The 3rd time Otis went back there, he decided that he was going to go camping. He was going to camp out. He was going to stay out there in the holler. right there at the mouth of it where this tragedy took place, and his dogs that he was very close to, that Bevan was close to. So Bevan said in his heart of hearts he didn't want to go, but he liked Otis, and he was, seemed like a good guy, and his grandmother was very good friends with these people, and Otis was actually one of her ex-boyfriends. She dated Otis for a while back before she got married, and they just stayed friends forever. And so he did not want him to do it, and he tried to talk him out of it, but Otis was like, no, I know what this is. I know that this thing needs to be unalived. So against his better judgment, Bevan and his friend and one of the people from the Lexingtons, and his buddy Denzel, they all camped out there with him right there on the banks of this, and they took turns watching, like standing guard. This is only a few hundred yards from where his family or his grandmother's house was. So he said that it was deep down in there, but it wasn't like, and he said that you could, get back to civilization pretty quick if you had to, but if this thing was on your heels, you weren't going to get away. And he said that the first night they were out there, nothing happened. It was a Friday night, and they did it again on Saturday. Now, Saturday, they got some noise, and then Sunday came. And he said at this point, he goes, I'm 20 years old at this point, He's like, and this thing made an appearance. He's like, it came, I saw it come out of the holler. I was standing guard. And he goes, and I saw it. I saw these red glowing eyes across the creek, and I could see it. It was blinking. He's like, and then something got its attention because I saw it turn its head and look, and then it kind of turned and leaned in, and it went back to looking at me. He's like, and I didn't waste any time. I didn't wait for this thing to come show its full self. He goes, I had night vision. I leveled my gun. He goes, and Creed Morse, he goes, I didn't play around. He's like, I just fired. He's like, and I know I hit it because I just saw it go backwards, like boom. He's like, and I wasn't, hang on one second, folks. I got to use the bathroom real bad. Hang on. Well, I'm gonna have to wait because Anthony is using it right now, and it won't take me long. I'll have to do what I got to do. I'm just gonna. It's not gonna take very. It'll be pretty quick. I'll be right back, folks. Don't go.
Hey, everybody. Some sick boys. Me and Anthony here.
I'm so sorry about that. We're fixing to get back to it. I hope a bunch of y'all didn't leave. Because sometimes I have to get up for different things off camera. Usually it's because I'm getting phone calls and stuff and text messages for the job. But sometimes I just have to use the restrooms.
I'm back.
But we don't like to stop the show for that, so
Yeah.
we try to like fly under the radar with it. Because if we stop, then like immediately
Everybody leaves.
30, 40
27
people
people.
They
leave.
already did.
Like what? What do you think is happening? Like,
they're like 10 seconds out of my life.
yeah.
How dare you be human?
Yeah. So let's get going here. So he had a 6.5 Creedmoor, and so he shot this thing and it went backwards. He yelled to his companions. He's like, hey, everybody. He's like, I hit the son of a bitch, you know? So everybody jumps up. They come running out. They all have, one of them has a 308, which some people would say a 308 is, even though it's an old, some people say outdated gun. I differ on that one. I think it's still a great rifle.
Yeah, that's still a hell of a cartridge.
It is. It's a hell of a round. And so they all come out and they just start firing in the direction of this creature, but it's not moving. It's gone. They get across the creek and they go up on it and they move some brush where they thought it was. And then they hear this sinister laughing type sound coming out of the holler. And they knew that it wasn't gone. It wasn't done. So as of now, they never found it. They never saw it again. Otis sadly passed away in Louisiana, like just a couple of months after this incident. He was deceased. And it was very sudden. He just passed away. He had a heart attack and he was gone. And so, you know, you got to stop and wonder about these creatures, you know, like what kind of evil they represent and what they are. We don't really know. We can't really say. We're not sure. We can speculate all day long and we can say, well, we think that they're this, we think that they're that. And we get people here that tell us all kinds of stories. We get a ton of them, and I hustle pretty hardcore to get the stories, and everybody knows that. The whole community ought to know it by now. But this, you know, on Monday, tomorrow, even though it's Memorial Day, we're still going to have a show. Be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And of course, if you want to tell your encounter, you're more than welcome to come on and tell your story. We had someone tell a Dogman encounter last Monday. We had somebody tell one the Monday before. I mean, it's pretty standard procedure. And people have come on and they've told vampire encounters. Multiple people have. Multiple people have told Dogman encounters. But really and truly, we don't really know what these are. I was listening to a guy today talk about the whole reptilians and the vampires, and he was saying that the vampires are literally reptilians. Now, I beg to differ. I think that some of the reptilians are, but I don't think they're the legends that come from the I don't think that they come directly from them.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they were vampirized. Stephanie Heen says, do you have a Cash App? Yes, I do. Never had anybody ask that, though. Are you a real person? Like, I'm a prince from Nigeria. Can you please give me your Cash App information?
Yeah, because there's a lot of Nigerian princes with frozen assets that want to sign it over to us.
A bunch of them.
Yeah.
Stephanie, if you want to donate it to the show, you can do it through PayPal, or you can. Can
we get one of the mods to post the PayPal link for?
Yeah, or if you want to do it through Cash App, you can private message us through. What's it called? Let me find the banner.
What Facebook or
yeah, there it is.
Email
prtpodcast.com. There's the donate. See, and now here's what are the ops call us begging for money. Folks have never got here and begged for money.
Just pissed off because no one gives it to them.
They're just mad because they can't get it.
Nobody supports their shows because they suck.
And on that note, I got to say something. I don't want to go into a dissertation. I promise. It's short and sweet. But if I wanted to, if this was the show, if we were doing this for money, we're bad at let's put it that way. Yeah. We're in the wrong business because there's no money in this. There's not. Okay. Us three being here, we're losing money as we speak. If this was about money, then we would stop doing the show, or maybe just do it once a week, and we would just all be going to work. We could be doing assignments and making 3 times as much as we're making on the show tonight.
Not to mention, like every 20 minutes, we could have. Do you like werewolves from blah 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 blah? Do you want to buy them? Like we could be doing advertisements and all kinds of crap.
All we want, you know.
You know what I would do?
Nobody even thinks about that.
I would like make the if it was about money. Like what I would do is I would change the channel to something like top 5 scariest werewolf encounters, and then
make believe shit.
Each video is just like 10-15 minutes long for this short monkey
AI
brain people who can't
crap.
pay attention to anything.
Number 5.
Yeah, just like top 5 videos, or like you use only like keywords that are trending, so that you don't actually have any creative input or control. You just follow trends and grift based on what's popular at the time, because that's what a bunch of channels do. And I mean, more power to them. If they make a living like that by giving people what they want, then so be it. But I mean, we do what we want here. Now we don't just follow like whatever trend is on Google Trends. I mean, because that's what they do. They go to Google Trends, they type in whatever's popular, and they're like, I'm gonna make videos about this now. That's not what we do.
Did you?
But that's where the money's at. So if you want to make money, you can do a channel and do that.
Yeah, and if we want to make money, we could just be faceless and not even. So, there's a lot of ways to make money, and doing this is not really making money.
Every other video would be like the dark secret behind blah blah blah.
Yeah, catchy little crap. Instead, we just
clickbait.
say, we just put on there werewolves, Dogman, Bigfoot, ghosts, whatever we're going to talk about is just there. We don't do a lot of clickbaity type stuff. I mean, it is what it is. But I say this: our audience has grown organically, absolutely organically. No bot subs, no fake, none of that crap. Likes or comments or views. I can't believe you can buy all that. And it's crap.
Yeah, there's a lot of Chinese and Indian bot farms.
It's not about money here, but we do need enough money to keep going, because you can't just keep going indefinitely, just pay for everything, because eventually you will not be able to do it. So that's pretty much it. I mean, like, we're not over here trying to light the world on fire or even reinvent the wheel. But we do hustle. We get a lot of people that talk to us, which is cool. We have a pretty solid reputation. And there are a lot of people that have been on the show. We have a lot of guests who come on and talk. Sorry, we couldn't make it Friday. My guests, Katie Elizabeth, pray for her, please. Her husband's in the hospital. He has heart, something that's going on. I'm not going to get into it, but he was still in there as of Friday. And it was not, I'm not even going to say like, oh, well, it worked out, because that's horrible, because her husband was in the hospital. But I was so ill and out of it on Friday. I just could not, there's no way I could have done the show. And so I was going to push through and force myself to do it if she was going to be able to come on. I had no sleep, had been not feeling good, and just was like, I just felt terrible. And I didn't have to do the show. So sorry about that. We didn't do it on Friday, but man, I felt like total just run over.
We were all feeling like crap,
man.
We're all sick.
Somebody says, do you have any stories on Deer Woman? Yeah, I've talked to a couple of people. One guy who is a Menominee, and another guy was Chiricahua, who have story. Both of them, though, and they're not really close to one another. They're tribes, but they both have that same legend. And I actually met a guy recently too who was Kiowa. You don't meet many Kiowa, and he's a Kiowa. Near the Trinity River, that area where his family was from. And he's actually Hispanic and Kiowa. And you look at him and you can see he's definitely native. But he gave me a really creepy story, which could be, it's like a not deer, but it was definitely like a skinwalker type creature, because it was a deer that jumped out in front of a car. It's a weird story. I mean, I guess I could tell it. It's not like it's, I don't know. I have nothing I'm going to do with it yet. And I only got into, he only talked to me about 3 weeks ago. What is it? Like the beginning of the month. This has been 3 weeks, right? It was right after we did payroll, whatever. So he reached out to me and we talked, and he lived, like I said, on the Trinity River, and the few people in that area that he was related to, they were Kiowa and Hispanic and Kiowa and white. and they were intermixed. And one of the reasons why there's not a whole lot of them is because just like the Comanche, and they were the Comanche's biggest ally, except they had some really weird beliefs. The Comanche did not have totems. They were very nomadic and they roamed around. The Kiowa were kind of like from that little area of the northeast of Texas, and they were friends. They would trade with the Comanches, and they were really in competition with them from where they lived. They roamed around that northern part of Texas, east to west, and they weren't really, like I said, they didn't really encroach upon the Comanches area, but they were very fierce. They were a smaller tribe, but they were also respected big time by the Comanche, and that says something because the Comanches didn't have much respect for anybody. And they didn't have to. They didn't have to because they pretty much could kick everybody's butt all over the place. And they damn near genocided the Apache in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of Apaches. Now, like when somebody says, I'm Apache, they're from Texas, I'm like, there's not very many of you. Yeah. So you better not be bullshitting because I can tell you the history and where each tribe is from, every spot in Texas where they're from. And I know people from those tribes. So don't tell me if you are, I'll find out if you're lying. Don't even try me because I know. Okay. Some guy was like, yeah, man, I came from a powwow. I was at the what's that place we went to the other day? The Bass Pro Shop, whatever. When we did security there, I was working outside of it. I had never gone in it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to go in it because they had that big old celebration or whatever going on. I was like, I don't want to be in there. I was like, ew, brother. And this guy was out there talking about, yeah, I just came from a powwow. And he looked like a white guy with Kenny Rogers with the frill jacket. He kept talking about it, and I was standing there and I was on the phone. And when I got the phone, I was like, really? What are you? He goes, I'm Apache. I'm like, okay, so you're basically like what, enemy? Because that's what that word means. It's a Comanche word that means enemy. And he goes, no, it doesn't. It's a tribe. I go, no, it's not. Go tell the Mescalero or the Navajo that they're Apache and they'll slap you. How about that? Because that's not, they don't want to be insulted and called enemy. It's just like, I'm Sioux. Nobody's going to go around saying you're Sioux. It's like saying I'm shit. I'm shit because somebody said that. And the Comanche or Comanchia, which is actually Spanish, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but look it up, do your research, whatever. The Comanche actually are called Nermina. That's what they're called, okay? So they're called the people. That's what they called themselves, the people, because I'm a quarter. I know this. I'm not even trying to be, and I'm not going around going, look at me, I'm native. I got a card that says I'm 5% of some bullshit. No, I'm just telling you exactly the truth. Yeah, Paul, thank you for that. That's a good question. I'm going to get into that. Thank you for reminding me. But anyways, being a quarter and like I don't go around advertising this shit like, hey, whatever. I was at a powwow, and this guy was over here. Kenny Rogers was telling me this, and I'm like, really? Was this before or after you became a gambler? And he's like looking at me like with the beady eyes. They have the little beady eyes, the little hang on, little Canadian eyes, with the glasses and whatever, and the little beady with the pork pie hat. I'm just kidding. He didn't have that. But I told him, I was like, really? Where was the powwow at? And he was telling me it was in McKinney. And I was like, well, that's close. I was like, but what are you doing down here? He goes, well, we came to the pro shop, the opening, whatever it was, And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I was like, well, okay, good talking to you, him taking poop. I'll see ya. Because I didn't believe him. I still don't believe that guy.
What is it with like the whitest people you ever meet and their obsession with wanting to be native?
There was a woman that was with him and she was white. And she was just kind of like she was not like I think she knew he was lying or something. And because he was talking to a guy that was there who was actually, he was Chickasaw. And like I had spoke to him earlier and he was from another Bass Pro Shop, was helping them open it. And when that guy walked off, me and him talked. And his name is Will. And he was like, I don't believe him. I don't either. I was like, I don't either. I don't believe him. And then through the conversation, he asked me if I was part native. And I was like, I am part. I'm Spaniard and native. He goes, yeah, I can see the Spaniard in your beard. He goes, but you have the high cheekbones. I said, I know. I said, yeah, I'm a quarter. And he was like, yeah. He goes, I'm half. So, and he's like, that guy, he's 2%. I was like, yeah, he's 2% milk. He's full of shit. No offense to anybody,
Yeah, definitely whole fat.
Somebody the other day tried to say on Facebook, like, you don't like white people. I'm like, I love white people, and I'm glad that the white farmers are getting to come here because they're being killed. That shut them up real quick. And then they're like, you're a fascist. I'm like, okay. You can't win for losing. Okay. So what am I? Am I a communist? Am I a Nazi? Am I
just all the bad things?
I'm a Zionist or something because I said Israel was going to be destroyed, and it was, but it's because of the people that are parasitizing, because they were parasitizing, whatever. But you don't understand the nature of reality. There's this one guy on there on Facebook who keeps talking about, God and all these different things. He talks about the Jews, Israel, and the prophecies and all this other stuff. And he's kind of on track. But then when I try to talk to the guy, he gets all, hey, guy, hey, who are you? And it's like, well, whatever, dude. I mean, you say you have a show. I mean, but like, and he's on the right track. He seems smart. But he believes that the person that's in charge now is the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, but if you look at what's happening, I mean, like economically, we would be destroyed right now. Yeah. So you can't really justify this other person, this foolish. And if you see what's happening now, they're admitting that there's a cure for diabetes. And did you hear what they did a couple days ago? They're talking about they have the cure for cancer. Oh, I'm not even joking.
So funny.
Amazing. All this stuff is coming out now. But doesn't matter. Even though they're curing diabetes, even if they cure cancer, and even if they can cure every disease on earth, this guy that's the president now will still be hated because media told me if I eat my boogers and fake meat that the weather will become more gooder.
Well, South America and Australia is just laying into the media over here, calling them activists fake. Instead of journalists.
Yeah,
that's what they are.
Yeah, and then Putin's over there, and he's saying so. And then that guy from Taiwan said something too about how stupid the journalism is over here.
Yeah.
I mean, they're everybody's criticizing these people, but they don't want to stop. They're over there like, and they're mad because this guy's talking about giving everybody $5,000 checks. I don't want it. Well, you blue-haired dumb bitch, I'll take it. Give it to me. I need it.
I'll take yours. It don't matter.
I got house payments and land payments to make. I don't have time. You don't want it?
Think of all the hair dye and ultra processed food you could buy with that.
They don't want to get.
Think of all the Funko Pops.
Like the Make America Healthy Again. They're like the Maha movement. Oh my God. It's literally Make America Hitler again.
They don't want to.
Freaking hell out of here with your stupid shit.
They don't want healthy food. They just want magic pills.
No.
They just want to take pills. The Ozempic. They just want Ozempic for free.
No, man. They don't even want that. They want to
don't diet and exercise.
They want to look like Miss Piggy, but be loved like a superstar.
Yeah, they want to be loved by like Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Miss Piggy. So, does anybody remember Farrah Fawcett? You guys probably don't remember her.
That's before
who would be very beautiful?
I remember
I would
her
think
because
the most beautiful actress ever was from Gone with the Wind.
The Scarlett O'Hara, but what was the actress's name? Chat, what was Scarlett O'Hara's actress's
tell us
name?
So we don't have to look it up.
Come on, chat. We're believing in you.
You know that she was a quarter Indian from India.
Really?
Her mother was half Indian. Yeah. Not Indian like
Vivian Leigh.
Yeah, Vivian Leigh. Yeah, she was probably the most beautiful of all the actresses back in the old days. They had actual real pretty girls back then.
Yeah.
Like these actresses now, they're horrible looking. Them and the dudes. They just look terrible. They look like bugs.
They look weird, man.
Yeah, they're just weird looking. They're all like
far apart in sexual guys.
And they're like, wow, look at this sexy
like
girl. Ooh, shouldn't you be, drooling? It's like some robot that doesn't understand humans and
Dude,
they look like little girls, bugs, or they are just actually children. That's what you get nowadays.
There's these weird before and after pictures where there's this weird Hollywood trend where they'll get their cheek fat sucked in. Or like sucked out real bad and just like gone and sucked up. They look like the Crypt Keeper.
Look at this guy.
What?
Robin Balzer.
Isn't this paranormal show? Every time we tune in, there's no paranormal stories.
So first of all, you have a fake name, Balzac.
Oh,
so if Mike, okay. This is one of our trolls here. He pretends to be different people. And if you're not a troll, then you're just one of the dumbest people I've ever come across. Robin, okay, Balzac or whatever your name is. We've just done 2.5 hours of talking about this, and then you tune in at the 2 hour and 35-minute mark and go,
normally when we
they're not talking about paranormal. Goodbye, Balzac.
You go at the moment at the end of our shows. We normally kind of do our after-hour show.
So check this out. I just pulled up all of this dude's comments on our channel. Every single comment is like some negative thing, but he's commented on like 4 or 5 different live streams that we've had. So he keeps coming back to watch us, like all of the haters. Yeah, y'all keep coming back over and over and over because you can't get enough.
If you don't know who that is, it's a guy named Ike and one of his people. There's this little cabal of people who hate us because they're not us, and they have literally no lives. They don't work. They live
off the government, pretending that they're disabled.
Goodbye.
Collect the fake disability check.
Profile guy. He only comes in to say something snarky and leave.
Government leech.
Man. Now you're banned. Go get another fake account so we can ban that one. Bye, Balzac. So anyways,
welfare, baby.
Paul Crook, what's his name? He's Greek, obviously. He has a Greek last name. He asked the question of what happened to the white dog. That is a funny question because they never saw it again. Now, the thing about Bevan in this story, this creature was never caught, and as far as I know, it still stalks around that area. He moved away from that area years ago, and the dog, nobody in that area for miles. He asked a lot of people if they had a dog like that, and he said he saw it in the creek when he lifted up his head when he was taken on the stretcher, getting him out of that area. And the dog the dog was gone. There was nothing there. But Patrick Lexington saw a white ball of light bouncing around near the treetops after this incident happened. When they were carrying him back to their farm to get help, and they had called his grandmother and said, hey, meet us over here, meet us. Well, actually, they had her meet him at the road so they could go pick her up and take her. And their families had been living side by side for a long time. And it's funny too when you talk about this because, they're black, their neighbors are white, and then the other neighbors are black and the other neighbors are white. And he's like, there wasn't any like racial tension or any trouble between these people. And I told Bevan this. I said, it's because it's not a white or black thing. When you start to realize who's pulling the strings, you'll realize it's not a Christian or Muslim or whatever. It's not a religious, it's not a race. It's not any of that. It's something far deeper. It's a negativity, an evil. Literally, it is a consciousness that comes after us and tries to do things to us. And so you have to understand something. The opposition will try to do anything they can to drive a wedge between you and other people, because you're not supposed to love. And as long as you're hating, well, guess what? You're doing exactly what they want you to do. White Fang. Never saw the movie, but I read the book. What's his name? Jack, that wrote the book. He also wrote Call of the Wild.
Oh yeah, Call of the Wild.
Jack London? Is it Jack?
Yeah,
London?
yeah, Jack London.
Yeah, it's funny how the commies always try to claim him, but this was back before communism, and I guarantee you he wouldn't have been a freaking communist, Jack London. I've studied him. Yeah,
White Fang was a good book. I never finished Call of the Wild.
But this creature that did what it did, it's I guess still out there doing whatever. He said that he doesn't really go back to that area much anymore. He doesn't even live in that state anymore. He lives in Alabama, but he said that he has a couple friends now that still stay out there or whatever, and he still talks to them once in a blue moon. And the last sighting that he knows of that creature was 2019. So still roaming around, doing what it does, killing and devouring, because Jesus tells us that Satan roams the earth like a lion, seeking those whom he can devour. What he does it through people. He does it through people. People are always like, people are the worst, whatever. Yes, and guess who are the vessels for these demons that do this? Because some people will say, well, this is like a demonic thing, right? But it needs a body. It needs a body to do what it does. And it has people who are willing vessels Always stupid people.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do anything for power. Money is something, people say, well, they want money, but what does money really do? Money is power.
It's a means to an end. Yeah.
It's a means to an end. They use it as a way to control us and get power. And one of the things I can tell you too, they don't need money. Like I posted something on my Facebook the other day of them printing money. It always cracks me up whenever somebody says, oh, it's all about the money when it comes to these people in power. For us, it's about the money, because you're normal people. You need the money to survive.
Mm-hmm.
These people that are in charge, they don't need the money.
Yeah, we talked about it.
They can print money out of thin air. So why on God's beautiful green earth would they need your money? These movies and these shows that they make, they're like, oh, go woke, get broke, whatever. There might be some people on a lower tier that actually give a crap about the money because they may still need it or be on a leash from these beings. But let me tell you something. I promise you, they don't need the money.
It's the biggest trap in the world.
You guys want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I never really liked the whole. I mean, like I get it, like go woke, get woke, go broke, but that's like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but that's like, if people who believe that's like for the uninitiated, like that's like, okay, yeah, you're right here on the surface level, you realize that, like woke and this leftist identity politics are bad, the enemy, whatever, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg. Money is like no object at this point. And the point of like pushing all these agendas, and like Bud Light did it with that Dylan Mulvaney, whatever he is, the transgender dude, and everyone was like, oh, Bud Light's making a big mistake, get woke, go broke, and they lost a bunch of money. It doesn't matter. These people, they plan for losing, like it's planned, it's in the budget to lose a bunch of money, because the money is not the issue. The goal is your mind. It's controlling the minds of the masses. Money is just a means to do that, and they're willing to lose any amount of it because they know it's not real. They know it's fake. It's just paper. Ever since I was a kid, and I learned that the Federal Reserve is a place that just prints money, then I just, it never made sense to me. It's like, oh, so if we can just make infinite money, then it's not real. Then why isn't everybody like, what is this? How does this work? It doesn't work because it's not real. It's fake. There is no such thing as get woke, go broke. It's not about money. It's about your mind. But even more than that, it's because it doesn't stop at the mind. It's a spiritual battle. Ultimately, is what it is, because the spirit controls the mind and the mind controls the body. So we have to think deeper about, like, why are these things happening, what is the actual goal here, and what is actually important, like what is being fought for here.
Yeah, and it's funny that Dick Richards says, and Dick, I hope you come on tomorrow night and co-host with me, but Dick Richards makes a good point there, and he says humiliation ritual, clown universe on purpose. Funny how you say clown, because and somebody had sent me a video about the clowns, and there was this guy who talks about it. I would like to. He's a British guy. I'd like to get him on the show one day. And so I don't know. Joe Two Pops, he said that the Lexington State. I don't know. I really don't. I didn't ask if they were still there or who was still there. But this guy, he's got this book he wrote, and he talks about. It was just a few minutes of a video. He was being interviewed, and he writes about how the Nephilim looked like clowns. And if y'all think back and you remember my cousin Trey, who used to go out with a Shoshone woman, and he lived up there, the Wind River Reservation, for 4 years. And he was on the show and he talked about it, and there was this clown that was seen around the reservation, in particular at the casino, and people would see it, and they would have all these weird people. You remember that show Killer Clowns from Outer Space? Go back and take a look at that. That's more of like a
And what was so scary about it is they were like
brains,
and they were like 8 feet tall.
and they were drinking people's brains.
Yeah,
because that's where your pineal gland is.
Yeah.
And these big jagged teeth.
They put them in these cocoons and like stick a straw in them and start drinking them.
P. Gene says that I hear that on the confessionals. I don't know if it wasn't on this, the one that I saw, the guy wasn't on the confessionals. It was called Beyond the Veil, or God, what is the name of that show? Is it Beyond the Veil?
Yeah, I mean that is the name of a show. I'm not sure if that's the one you're
probably
talking
it was
about.
on there. But the guy was on there talking about it. And if he came on our show, I'd have a lot of interesting questions to ask him and some stuff to talk about, because I have some reports of people seeing clowns and having weird encounters with clowns. I don't think that they're like it. I don't think that that's something, as we've talked about on the show, people seeing clowns. How many times have we even talked about it? It's been quite a bit that it's been brought up, where people, and we've had stories from people that have talked about seeing clowns, and the way that these clowns operate is not like a normal clown. It's, of course, so you got this weird dynamic where these creatures, they have this like white face, and they have this weird like it's makeup, and there'll be two different shades of color, black and white and weird brown, weird streaks, whatever. And people will claim that they see these beings, and I think they take this happy, like they put on makeup that they can, like a mask, so they can fool people, in particular children, into thinking that they're friendly or whatever, and they're really not. They're vampiric in every sense of the word. There it is, Paul Stobbs. That's his name. And I would love to get him on the show, and I need to reach out to. I haven't reached out to him, but I need to. But I probably need to just break down and hire a publicist so we can just get it, so I don't have to do all his work, because I have a business to run too, and the business makes a lot more money than this. Yeah, and if I had time like Tony does, it'd be one thing. I don't have the kind of time that he does. He was talking about barely having enough time to go do that. And somebody said the other day that Tony mentioned me a few times on the show. I was like, yeah, well, I mentioned him too. We've been friends for a while. He was at my first conference. And if you stop and you look at this, phenomena that we're dealing with, it's all connected. There are multiple people who've talked about seeing clown-like entities. And when I say clown, it's like saying wolf. It's like wolf-like entities or clown-like entities. And they have presented it to me, and they will tell you people don't take it seriously. One of them was a Dogman, had a Dogman encounter. He was on Cundiff's show. And, of course, he don't care about somebody talking about a clown. He's not going to, it's about Dogman, but this person said, hey, I had this encounter with this clown. It was, before he had the Dogman encounter. And he kind of believed that, I don't say kind of, but I think he did believe that it was what the Dogman was. Yeah. And I remember like getting a story from a guy, and I even can't remember his name now. It's been so long, but we talked about this. He was like a kid or something, I think, and he was at a carnival. Wasn't it a guy or was it a girl? I can't remember who told me that. It was a guy that told me, but it might have happened to a girl. But I think he was talking about it like it wasn't him. It was somebody he was with or he knew. And they saw this werewolf-like creature, but it was real tall, and it was wearing a bodysuit. But you could see. You remember that story? I told that story.
Yeah.
But it had like a clown mask on. Like it was obviously you could see this. It was bulging out. The snout was bulging out. It was wearing a mask, a full-bodied mask, trying to hide who it was. But it was a freaking werewolf. And they were looking at it. It was breathing weird, and they were looking up at it like, "What the freaking hell are you?" And they're just like, "Oh, well, this is a person wearing a clown suit over a werewolf suit." But they just happen to be 7 feet tall. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, it's a carnival, right? So you blend in. There's another one that told me that he was a werewolf, and he was with a carnival for like 17 years. And made no bones about it. Said his name was Kevin. Like he didn't even balk at what he said. But he gave me his full name too, because who's going to believe you? when you tell that story. Says his name was Kevin Butler. That was the name he gave me. Now, I don't know if that's his real name. It's probably not. But that's what he claims. And he was like, you can look me up. I'm a real guy. I mean, you can look up a Kevin Butler. You don't know if that's him or not, you know?
Yeah.
I want people going harassing people. I mean, I don't believe that this, necessarily 100%. But I mean, people are weird. Serial killers, they want people to know. Eventually, they're just like, I'm tired of not getting recognition I deserve.
Yeah.
Okay, well, tell everybody so you can go to prison, you piece of shit. I mean, that's what you get. But this guy claims that he had done some dastardly things, you know? And the funny thing is he tried to tell me that he was a hobo back in the day and that he rode the rails and that he rode into my hometown and was one of the people that was running around scaring people and doing things. And get this, his job with the circus was to be a clown. Yeah. And so I asked him, I was like, okay, because I humored the guy, Kevin. I said, Kevin, were you the guy that I saw back in 1990? He goes, no, that wasn't me. He goes, but there were people running around doing stuff already there. He goes, I didn't stick around long because the locals were already, pretty, deviant. And so I don't remember how he worded it, but I was like, this is a couple of years ago. I never bothered to even follow up because I never got another message from him. He never answered my last question. Because I said, where are you now? No, nothing. Silence. Never saw him again. Never talked to him. It was just an email. But you get a lot of weird emails.
Yeah.
There's another guy who claims that he was in the Middle East and he nearly got eaten by a sandworm. And it bit 4 of his toes off.
Jeez.
Can you believe that? So you get some weird stuff. People talk about some weird stuff and they'll send you stuff and you follow up with them and they don't. I mean, it's your prerogative. You don't want to tell your story, then don't. But, am I supposed to believe this? But then again, what are the perils of not believing it? Because then you don't know. These people could be stalking you. You don't know what they are.
It's like Pascal's wager.
Yeah. And so you got these clown-like entities. And I think it's interesting that these people, they love to wear masks,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never liked wearing masks or like face paint. I never liked putting it on my face. I never liked stuff covering my face.
So, anyways, folks, we have not been able to do the mail off. We are planning Tuesday because Monday is a holiday. Just a lot of work, and everybody got ill except for me, basically. I'm a little bit sick, but it's just my throat, man. It's mainly just my throat. And yeah, Lawrence, the Mongolian death worm, yeah, except not in Mongolia. If I sat back and I tried to read every single email and took them all, to heart, then I would be crazy as a loon at this point. But because you can't, there's too many.
Yeah.
But you have to understand something, man. I really do believe that a lot, I'd say if I put a number on it, 75% of it probably is legit. I believe it. Because there's some people I just absolutely, you can just tell. You get on the phone with them and you're just like, they're like, yeah, like if this happened to you, why would you fumble around for the words? Now some people will fumble around because they're
nervous.
They're scared. They're nervous. They're reliving it. It's a horrific thing. I get it. But then somebody that's like, oh, I got this whole story I can tell you. And then every other word is, well, like they're thinking about it. Like you're like, are you making this up or what as you go along? Do you have notes you're looking for? What are you doing? I don't want to scare people away from talking to me because some people may actually do that naturally, but I'm a pretty good bullshit detector. And, I've actually talked to somebody for a couple hours and then said, I'm not going to use your story. Sorry. They get offended. They do. There's a few people running around in that other camp that wouldn't help them out with their 15 minutes of fame or whatever it is they were looking for. And so now they're angry. They're pissed off. Well, I mean, you're full of shit. Can't prove it, but you can't prove what you're saying either. So, there's that. And I want to say something about like There was one other thing I wanted to say. I don't even know if I should repeat it, but I think we're kind of at this point where we need to be adults. I guess I don't know how would you say it. Like we need to be on the same page. Like how far we've come on the show, what we talk about, to where people, if you're new here, you really shouldn't be popping off and saying things because you're behind. So go back and catch up, and then you can say something. Otherwise, you just sound like you're when you say something childish, and it comes out like that. Somebody say, "Well, I'm new here," whatever. Well, then why are you commenting if you don't know what the hell's going on? Because the OGs in here, they've been here for a long time and they know what's going on. So be polite and kind of be nice and just try to learn, pay attention, go back and watch the episodes. I mean, there's a lot of material here, and we don't have as many subs as a lot of these other channels, but we have a lot more material than they do. Why is that? Because we don't promote it to everybody, because it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to be on the level. To be a paratrooper is not like being a listener of any of these other people's shows. And no offense to them, no knocking on them, but anybody can just pick up and listen to their show and kind of know what the hell is going on. You can kind of do that with us, but if we talk about certain subjects, you're going to be like, whoa, what the hell?
Yeah.
We've been talking about these subjects for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are just now jumping on the little choo-choo train and they're piggybacking on us. And that's fine. They can do what they want. Some of these people I'm okay with. Some people I'm not. Because some of them are legit trying to do work and some of them are just full of shit.
Yeah, but we have a real sense of community with our people here, and it's definitely about quality over quantity. Because I mean, with channels 10 times our size, subscriber wise, and you can check this yourself. But any huge channel that does a live stream, see how many people they have. It's usually like 200, 100, 300, 400, maybe. And we're like a tenth of the size of some of these channels, and we've gotten up to like 800 something people, at our peak, but we'll average around 500, 600, 700. So
yeah, I mean,
it's because our people are real. Like our subscribers are real.
Mm-hmm.
They're real people.
Mm-hmm. And like even on a slow night, we'll have like quite a few people.
Yeah,
exactly. 6 years of content.
Yeah. And Daniel Palmquist has been around for a long time. You have these people who, want to comment and say things, and then they don't. You're not doing yourself any favors, if you haven't been listening from the beginning. You really don't. Just catch up. Go back and watch. And somebody said, "Oh well, we're buying subs," and let me tell you something. We would have a lot more subs than we do if I was buying them.
Yeah.
Okay. You would not be at 40 something thousand in 6 years. It's not that much. It's like 8,000 a year.
If we were buying subs, we could be at 100,000 in like a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so if if you buy subs, there's like, oh well, you're buying subs. All you got to do is look at the numbers, dude. Look at the numbers. You get spikes during certain times, and that's it. I mean, and then it just kind of, peters away, whatever, and it comes back. If you were to be buying subs, you'd have so many more subs. I'd have that silver plaque or whatever the hell it is that they give you for, but we don't. We're not trying to rush to the finish line here because there is no finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're taking it, the way we're supposed to take it. And we don't get, we have a connection with our audience, in other words, that other people don't. They don't have the same level, because not only do we have the subs, but I mean the views, but look at who's here. 664 people at 3 hours. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Most channels can't do that. They have to have a little 15, 20-minute video, and you're lucky to get them to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And I'm not into the people who can't keep their,
Yeah.
attention span of a freaking sandfly. I mean, it's like, dude, I don't want you. I don't need you. I need somebody who's going to be here, who's going to give me feedback that's positive, and we're going to make some headway. And if I ask a question, because I'm caught up in the moment of doing this story, you're going to answer it like Vivian Leigh, just because I got so much going on right now. I have more going on right now than I ever have in my life. And it is super freaking stressful. I have stuff going on that you can't even imagine. I don't even try to get into it. I have a whole nother world life outside of this, and not the least of which is, home life, which everybody's home life can be stressful. But when you're running businesses and you have all this stuff going on, it can be hard. It can be a very challenging thing. And, we have a ranch, we have all kinds of crap going on. We have to go out there, we have to take care of business, and we have a business to run. And I would love more than anything to just sit here every night for 2 or 3 hours and just talk about all kinds of stuff. But, and you could learn a lot if I could do that. Now we just need to find Daddy Warbucks, a rich uncle, comes out of nowhere and says, I'm going to bankroll you, boy.
Yeah.
With the cigar.
We need a whale.
We just come on and let me help you. And then be like, yay. And then that's it. And then now Josh Turner can talk every night on the radio.
Yeah. We need
we don't have that.
We need a rich patron.
But hope. Keep hope alive. Eventually somebody will come out of the woodwork and just be willing to bankroll us.
I can only hope.
Then I can sit at home and play with my Legos. I'd be like, I'm working in my room. You're like, my wife opens the door. It looks like you're just building the Millennium Falcon. That's not research from the Palladians.
How am I supposed to know?
You don't believe in me. That's why I have this problems. I have to be here for 5 hours. God, go away.
When we're in the ship and we need to escape, you're not going to know the layout. I will.
Yeah. I'm studying.
We'll be a master pilot like Han Solo.
Doing research.
She'd be like, okay, we have a show in an hour, and I will be there. So she closes the door. You're like, crap. I didn't wear pants. Put these freaking Legos up. I got to start over when I get back. No, I think I'll be okay. I think I could handle it. I think I could resist playing with Legos, considering I don't have any. But if anybody wants to donate them, I asked for them every year as a kid, and I never got them. Never got them. Can you imagine that? I got made fun of for that in middle school. Yeah, like there's like 6 kids at the table, and I'm like, I never got Legos, and they were like, well, you never got Legos? Oh, you were poor.
Yeah, and kids are merciless little bastards.
I played outside.
Mean.
Legos are a bit too intense for me. I stick with Lincoln Logs.
I think I was outside like 90% of the time.
Yeah, I mean that's
at night. Like maybe in the summertime when I'd stay up late at night, I hated it. I'd get up and nobody would be awake. That's so I would just play video games or play with my action figures because there was nothing else to do. Because you're out in the country most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was always great when I was a kid. You would walk like 2 hours to your friend's house just to go inside and play video games. Same thing you could have done at your house.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but you want to hang out with your friends, Yeah. Okay, so I have a quick little story here about Lady Caca. When I was working security at that thing has been bothering me for
the
same one. It's like there's just one. And he's just like,
hey, what's up, guy?
Hey, what's up, guy? Hey, what? What? You don't think I could be a superstar? I'm a gnat, baby.
Natural.
Flies away, comes back. Well, what's up? What? And what? And what?
A gnat needs screen time too.
What you doing?
I'm all natty, baby.
Come at me, bro. What you got? He buzzes away again. I'm like, you piece of crap. I met Lady Caca. Her name was Stephanie Germanotti. And at that time,
still there.
Huh? Yeah, he's still buzzing around. Pretty damn sure that it was her. Now, I was with my cousin Bo. Same last name as me. So I don't know if he remembers it. the way I do, but like because I told him one time when we were like at Thanksgiving or something, and I told him, I said, that was Lady Gaga. This was back in 2000, early to mid 2000s. I don't remember exactly what year it was. Maybe 04, 05, something. What the heck? I don't remember what year it was. She was young, and she wasn't calling herself Lady anything. She was Stephanie, and she had dark hair. And I remember she was with these 2 or 3 people, and they were Puerto Rican, and they were from New York City, and they were there at this woman whose house was on the property that we were guarding, and it was at this subdivision where these people's homes were like millions of dollars of these homes, and now they'd be worth like double-digit millions. And the woman worked for National Geographic, and I don't know what she was doing there, but the woman was not there. But she was there with this like dance troupe, and they were like jumping around, just dancing around, listening to pop music. And she's like, yeah, we're dancers from New York. And her name was Stephanie. She got popular a few years later. And I remember looking and going like, and I'm like, I called my cousin. I was like, do you remember that girl? And I told him, I said, that's got to be her. That's got to be the same girl. That is her. It was her. She was here in Austin. And I can almost promise you it was her. But this was back when she was young, and she was not, famous or anything. She was really young. It might have been 2006 or something like that. It might have been later. But I can't prove anything, I'm telling you right now, but I'm pretty sure it was her, And she was with these guys and another couple of girls, and they were like, because one of them, I remember talking to him, and he's from New York City. And it was him and his girlfriend, and they were like New York Rican, and so we were talking and whatever. And one of them was from Chicago, and they had been to some of the same places I'd been in Southside, and we started talking and bullshitting. And I was like, so I'm not gonna say the lady's name, but she was a journalist for National Geographic, and she was actually at the Sea of Cortez. And I said, she's coming back. They're like, she's coming back tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, so y'all got here a day early. She's like, yeah. And Stephanie was there. At least a person named Stephanie that looked like her with dark hair. She didn't have blonde hair back then. She didn't dye it, whatever. And she just looked like an Italian girl. That's what she looked like. And she told me, she's like, yeah, I'm Italian. I'm from New York, whatever. And I said, okay. And so they were there and they were dancing around or whatever, or she was living in New York at that time. And that lady was coming back, and they were going to do some kind of work with her or something. I don't know what. That lady's husband was a big shot. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say what it was he did, but everybody out there, one guy was a stuntman who now has a place down in South Austin. I know him. And there was another guy who was a pro wrestler who was with WWE. And I'm not going to say who or what, because of those people. Like when I took over that contract, one guy was one of the high ups from Hewlett Packard, who his house was right next door to one of the houses we were. He was only there, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. He had a house out there. And then there was another guy who was a big shot, mega attorney guy. And there was a couple of an actor and an actress that were pretty famous that lived out there too. And so when I got the job there, I just signed a paper saying, look, I'm not going to disclose whatever. It's been so long now, I don't know if it would still be a binding thing, but I'd have to look into it. But I started talking about the people out there. And it's not a big deal for the most part. I rarely saw them. And if you do your job, then they're not going to have to be out there telling you, hey, this is going on, because you're doing your job. Mm-hmm. I got to be pretty good friends with the stunt guy. He knew a lot of people. He had pictures with, the Fall guy, the guy that plays the Fall. You probably don't know who that is or whatever. I can't even remember his damn name, but he had pictures with that dude. Yeah, Stephanie. Yeah, Stephanie or Stefani, whatever. Yeah, John Maddox. Yeah, there you go. And she said her name was Stephanie, And Germanata, that was her last name. Yeah. And I remember that because she said Lee Majors. There you go. Lee Majors. He had pictures, like he did work for that guy. And then what's that dude's name? MacGyver. guy played MacGyver. He was, he did work with the A-Team. Pretty cool, man. He had some pretty cool stuff. And then the pro wrestling dude, I think if I said his name, everybody would know who the hell he was. Anthony, you met some of the people out there. One of them was my client's helicopter pilot / bodyguard, who was a former mercenary. And he was overseas. And so we'd been friends for years. And he got me the job over there because he saw me guarding this lady's house. And he says, hey, you want a job? Because I don't want to have to sit up here and unlock this gate all day. Like every night I got to come up here and unlock this. He goes, I got to go to Houston and I got to depend on my nephew to do it. And his nephew was a drag racer. You remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so a lot of like famous people, and they had like a community. It was a big, like really big houses. One guy was the dude that created a very popular video game series on the internet, on the interwebs, and he's a world-renowned guy. So yeah, that was a pretty sweet gig. And then eventually I started working with the company I'm with now, but it was called something else at that time, and I got they bought the contracts, and I thought I was done. I was like, well, I'm done. I'm just gonna work for a while with these people and figure out what my next move is. And I thought I'd be in security like maybe another year, and then I would just move on and do something else. And then here I am, still doing it, but now I'm doing the show. So. All right, folks, I got to run, man. It's 11 o'clock. I got to go. I got to go lock up pools and do all kinds of crap. But thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for everybody that donated. Thank you for everybody that's been wonderful. The paratroopers, great people, nice people, everybody. We will be back tomorrow night. And so Sunday is like the beginning. Sunday, and then you have Monday. Sunday feels like the end of the week, but it's actually the beginning for us because we do Sunday night, which is our big night. Then we do Monday, which is getting bigger because we get people that jump in and they tell their stories. It's been 2-3 months now, just people every Monday just telling their encounters. So tomorrow night will be who knows what people, somebody with a Dogman encounter, a vampire encounter, ghosts, Bigfoot, who knows? Duendes, elves, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to show up. The Wendigo, the Pale Crawler, not Slender Man, because I think Slender Man's bullshit.
Oh, it's definitely bullshit.
Yeah, I don't believe in that shit. I've never gotten a Slender Man report, ever. Not one that I can sit there and honestly go, you know what? That's Slender Man. Never, I don't, like, I just surprised because somebody asked me the other day about that, and I was like, I never heard that. I've had what I think were Hellhound encounter, and I had a Dogman encounter. Hellhound encounter was backed up by my friend Tony Duran, who came on the show and talked about it. But who knows? You never know what you're going to get on a Monday. And then Tuesday is the hour-long podcast episode. It's the continuation. Now, here's the interesting thing. The woman that was on that was on our show, Joe Stone, right? She says her full name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because if not, I just screwed up. Joe Stone, because I can't remember who does or who doesn't. I usually don't say people's names, but Joe Stone, Tuesday, she told a very riveting and terrifying encounter. She told it weeks and weeks ago, but we recorded it. We did it for the show. She's coming back. It's going to be the part 2 on this Tuesday. But get this, Dogman is not all she's seen. She's not just had a Dogman encounter. She's had other things happen. And as of the time of the recording, she was having encounters and problems, her and her daughter, with some stuff that was, So she's going to come on, or we're going to have her back on Tuesday.
Yeah, like that. For this last Tuesday was just more about what happened in her past, but now we're kind of catching up with what's going on with her now.
Yeah, she's got a lot more to share. So,
John, I agree with you. It probably does. But I could say this: she's going to come back, and she told that story on another show, or maybe a couple shows. I don't know, but they never got into this stuff. Because here at PRT, we do all of it. That's the point. We don't just tell you one little aspect of somebody's weird encounters. So she'll be back on Tuesday and then another one on the Tuesday after. And I think the third episode is me talking about a lot of different stuff. And we get into a lot of different. Now, some people will get upset because they'll be like, now you need to hear this, because they'll be like, oh, well, you're talking and the guest is not talking, whatever, because the guest doesn't have 3 hours of something to say. It's just common sense, okay? So let me do the show and you do you, and you just sit there and listen. And if you want to participate, you can jump on, but not during a podcast episode, but during a YouTube channel show, you can. I don't care. I don't shy away from anybody. You notice when somebody makes a comment on here, I just post it. And I address it. I answer it. So, you know, if the last episode, I don't remember what we talked about or whatever, it's been so long, but if I'm talking, it's because I have something to say after 2 hours, because it's a 3-hour interview and it's broken up into 1 hour chunks. Yeah. Then that last episode, I'm saying what I got to say. If you want to hear it, listen. If not, don't hear it. People don't understand that. I guess we need to break it down so people will understand.
Yeah. Well, the first episode was like 90% Joe talking the whole time.
Which is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to do the talking at the beginning, like with Rachel. You know, it was like, you heard that, right?
Yeah.
So I had to do the talking, and then she took over in the next 2 episodes, and it's the opposite for this. And it just depends on the person and how comfortable they are. And I know what I'm doing. Okay, I do. And people always just say stupid things like, well, you're talking over the guest, whatever, because the guest doesn't have 3 hours of stuff to talk about. Stupid. I mean, use common sense. I mean, what do you think is going on? Or if you want to shorten the show to 30 minutes where they just say some stuff real quick and then that's it. Or do you want to try to, find out what's going on? Because if you're just one of those people that doesn't have time, I guess you're one of those people that has no time. They eat their Pop-Tart raw. They're like, 3 seconds is long enough. I got to eat this. I got to go. I don't have that kind of time. Like this.
We're not making the show for people like you.
They don't even take it out of the wrapper. They just eat it in the wrapper. It's like you gotta like take a little bit of time to figure it out, because you're gonna be lost as hell. You'll be lost in space. All right, folks. So we got to run, man. Thank you. And we have to run. Like I said, Tuesday we're going to do the giveaway. What is buccal fat removal? What is?
It's pronounced buccal.
Buccal. What is buccal?
I don't know. I just made that up.
I don't know. Boo call or
Boost Boy 813 says, "Can we share your short videos on TikTok?"
What is this? Bye bye balls. What is this? Is this a troll?
No, she's talking about that ball sack dude earlier.
Oh,
I think
because I thought Brittany was one of us. So did she get hacked?
Can they share your videos on TikTok? Some guy asked, "Can we share your videos?"
They're already doing it.
That's what I'm saying.
There's a guy on TikTok that every other time I turn around,
he records half of our videos.
He records it and just posts it on TikTok, which I don't really care, but you should give me credit for it at least. So, like, give us credit, dude. I mean, you're stealing. Basically, what you're doing is you're stealing our content. And it popped up in my wife's feed, and I'm like, but a bunch of people are doing that. They're writing books and quoting me left and right. And it's okay, I guess, but at least quote me correctly
and give credit. I don't think
and then they'll put a number for the one guy wrote a book. He put it on he put the numbers of the show on there, and it wasn't even correct. I was like, what is that? He put the right numbers on there. And then the one guy was just like, half of his show was just him talking. I'm not even going to tell you because I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of having the views. Damn, dude. I mean, it's just ridiculous, dude. Do your own work, man. Figure it out. I try not to be a jerk about stuff, but dude, it gets kind of old, man.
Yeah, but like if they brought us traffic, it'd be one thing, but they don't credit us or anything.
They cut through and they give themselves and they don't even put the context of what I'm talking about. They use it to back up what they're saying. and they're stealing my time, energy, and effort because I have to do the work, and then they're just living off of what I got. It's parasitic, man. That ain't cool. But anyways, all right, guys, I gotta run. Thank you. I'll see you. Good night.